We'd like to call to order the April 24th meeting of the Clive City Council. Would the clerk please call roll?
Mayor Edwards.
Here.
Council members Weaver.
Here.
Boyd.
Here.
Judkins.
Here.
Klein.
Here. Very good. If you all would rise and join us with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next up, we have the approval of the agenda. I am not aware of any change.
Move approval.
Second. Motion is second to approve the agenda. Further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Our agenda is approved. Next up, we have our citizen presentation. This is the opportunity for a citizen to approach the council on an item that is not on the agenda. If someone has an item, they should come to the podium. Pete, do we have anyone online who might be interested in approaching the council?
Oh, Your Honor.
Very good. Before we move into our first presentation, I wanted to acknowledge a great loss we had in our community with the loss of Jay Myers. Many of us knew Jay from back in his days working with Congressman Boswell and several decades of partnership, and most recently as the president of Simpson College. So I just want to take a moment and just have a moment of silence acknowledging all the contributions Jay has made to our community. Next, we have Sally Dix here to give us presentation on Bravo Greater Des Moines. Sally.
Good evening, and thank you all so much for the opportunity to present a little bit. Especially want to thank Councilmember Judkins, who serves as the Clive representative on the Bravo Board of Directors, and certainly want to give a nod to Matt McQuillan, who's been great, provided great staff leadership and partnership, especially over the last few months, our dynamic times. You're a very tenured council, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the history of Bravo and where we came from and how things work. I do want to just remind you that Bravo has only ever existed as a regional entity. We started with 9 local partner governments. We now have 17, and those all have separate agreements with Bravo so that we can provide our services. Those agreements are all exactly the same. Each community pays in 2/7 currently, 28.6 of their hotel motel tax to Bravo. We do have 3 cities that have separate terms. They pay Bravo a flat fee simply because they don't have hotels. But if they did get hotels, the agreements are all exactly the same, and we're providing the same service to every community, regardless of the level that they're paying into our organization. Hotel motel tax makes up 95% of Bravo's annual revenue. We intentionally do not fundraise, so we don't compete with the organizations we were formed to support. And we are governed by a 37-member board of directors, which does include 1 representative from every single community that is paying into Bravo. So all of our cities have a voice at our table in our decision making. We are currently managed by a full-time staff of 4. Quick reminder that Bravo was established 20 years ago to support the region's cultural sector in a variety of ways. Although our pathways have evolved a little bit over the last 20 years, our intent has always been for Bravo to maintain a broad-based regional focus on the arts and cultural community. The region's nonprofits have always been our primary partners in delivering on this promise, but we have never been restricted or limited to only a funder, nor have we ever been restricted or limited to only a certain group of organizations. Bravo meets a need, I'm sure you're all familiar, meets a need for our regional strategy for supporting arts and culture that is efficient, accountable, and impactful. Again, many of you have been around for a long enough time to remember that prior to Bravo, every city had to meet one-on-one with every nonprofit organization. You then had to consider those investments individually. You had to process any awards, manage and evaluate those grants independently, and then you had to start over the following year. This took certainly an incredible amount of time and resources from your staff and your council, and it also required each city to create a separate set of criteria for their investment. What are your priorities and how are you allocating those available funds? It also took a lot of time from cultural partners having to travel to each city. That's time away from delivering on their mission to your residents and our community. Bravo grant-making provides best practice accountability for regional investment of those public funds. All of the applications are reviewed, scored, and funded using a thorough and transparent process that actually includes Bravo board members. The process also relieves council leaders from having to make decisions about investments in organizations that are led by your neighbors, your family, and your friends. Funding recommendations that are made by Bravo's Community Investment Committee and are brought up to the Bravo board, and that's where final funding decisions are made. Again, the board includes one representative from every city investing in Bravo to ensure that every community has a voice in our decision-making. Our largest grant cycle is for general operating support, and there are many more eligible organizations applying in the last few years than there have been previously. We think that's partly due to the fact that our eligibility criteria have changed very little in the 20 years that we have been operating. These criteria up here are what has been set out, and the board regularly reviews these criteria. We have intentionally kept this as our framework because we want to pitch a wide tent. We want many organizations to be eligible. However, what we're finding now is that this wide tent may actually be a limiting factor for Bravo's work, our value proposition, and the region. There are many organizations providing arts and cultural programming that actually don't fit these requirements, in addition to the many organizations that are growing that do fit these requirements. So we've been looking at eligibility requirements consistently for the last couple of years and feel this is a great opportunity for us to continue to evolve to meet community and regional needs. 93% of total hotel motel tax revenue received by Bravo in the last 5 years has gone out directly in our 3 grant programs. As I said, we are an extremely efficient and accountable partner. That includes our 3 grant programs: operating support, public art, and capital project grants. You can see from this chart between FY19 and FY24, our hotel motel tax revenues have increased over the last 5 years for sure. But I want to be clear that during that same period, the number of Bravo cultural partners has increased 132%. We've gone from 66 to 87. So the way I like to say that is, for sure, there's more pie. There's also a lot more people at the table. I think the growth is actually a sign of success, that the region's residents increasingly value a diverse range of cultural assets, and Bravo has leveraged the increases in hotel motel taxes to maintain steady and stable investment in our existing organizations. That was fast. By far, our largest grant cycle is for general operating support. And we do recognize, I don't know what's going on, Pete. Help me go back to my chart. Okay. We know that the regional organizations are incredibly important, and we know that they're the ones that are most likely to be driving hotel motel tax revenue, most likely to draw a broad audience. And I want to be clear that although we invest in everybody, we do go back one more. Sorry. There we go. Although we do invest in everybody, the vast majority of our hotel motel tax funding is going to those large regional serving organizations. In our last grant cycle, you can see that 70% of Bravo's funding went to organizations with annual operating budgets of $1 million or more. If you go down just one tier, an additional 21% went to those 19 organizations with budgets between $200 and $1 million. Those are, again, regional entities. 54 organizations, those bottom 2 tiers, are sharing less than $450,000 of hotel motel tax revenue. It's a very small portion. It is extremely significant to those organizations to be receiving this funding from Bravo, but it is a very small portion of the investing that we're doing on your behalf. And I just was working. Sorry. Yes, go ahead, Michael.
On that one, can you explain to me why that's a good thing, right? That the money is being doled out to the largest corporation, or largest organization, to the largest. To me, and sometimes you could make the argument that the money is best used at a smaller organization. I know you have a very easy, simple answer for that, because to me, that's almost the reverse of possibly what I think in my head. Now, we can debate on who they are, right, all day long, but that
Yep. I think you're hitting on an important part of our value proposition, which is what organizations do you value and what does Clive value? The challenge with being a regional organization is that may not be the same things that other communities value. And so it's always trying to find the right balance in the portfolio. We are open to that conversation. There are many communities that have expressed more commitment to the regional organizations that are feeding the hotel motel tax cycle and are more likely to be driving economic development. The smaller organizations are the ones that are more likely to be driving community pride, local participation. Your residents and visitors are singing in the choir or playing in the band. So there's absolutely an argument to be made, which is exactly why Bravo has kept our eligibility requirements as they have been, as opposed to over focusing on one or the other. But a case could be made either way.
And if I might interject, isn't one of the things we evaluate as part of the Bravo board, the reach, the number of people served? It is important to recognize the number of Clive residents being served by a number of the regional organizations that aren't necessarily located here, but add to the quality of life and enjoyment of our citizens. So that is a big part of it.
Absolutely. And we'll get to that in just a minute. I have some data on that as well.
I certainly have more, but I'll wait till the end.
Do you want me to get through the whole thing and then you can ask?
However you want. Sometimes my brain can't
Go ahead.
think
Hit me.
long term like that, right? It wasn't ready. Well, if we go back to the participation and you said it increased by, you're at 80 some, and now it increased by 100 and some
Yeah.
percent or whatever it is. Again, I ask, why is that good? Like, should you take everybody under your umbrella? If your number is finite, then perhaps let's start looking at how we shave that way too many organizations down,
Mm-hmm.
where the money then can go further. right?
Yeah. And for sure, those are choices we're going to have to make. But until recently, our pool wasn't finite. It was a growing revenue stream, and we were able to bring in the new organizations. Again, many of the new organizations are at that 1,000 to 200,000 level. They're not taking a huge portion of the available revenue. We were able to continue to fund the large organizations and their growth and support and sustain the local choirs, theater companies, historical societies with that growing revenue stream. We are absolutely going to have to look at how we allocate these resources moving forward, knowing that there is a potential change in our trajectory for revenue.
What was the dollar value distributed like in the last cycle, Sally?
Through our general operating support, it was almost $5 million, just right at the,
Is that pretty consistent from past
Yeah.
years? Has it grown? Is it more?
you
Is it
can
less?
see just there how we've been coming out of the pandemic. Obviously, it was a little bit wonky, but we've certainly bounced back, and we've maintained again 93% of the money coming in going out through these grant programs. So we've been able to have more people at the table because there's been more pie.
Those are similar numbers to yours, like the CVB, and that growth after.
I think so, similar. Everything shut down and closed out with COVID.
Okay.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So beyond driving quality of life and creativity and innovation and all of the things we know the arts are uniquely suited to do, I also want to make sure that you understand that the arts are an economic driver, an essential economic driver for our region. This data is a little bit dated. We only collect it every 3 years, but based on 2022 numbers, the nonprofit cultural sector in Greater Des Moines generated more than $309 million in annual economic impact. I want you to take a look at that bottom number, the very bottom number. That includes nearly $15 million in local tax revenue generated for the communities investing in Bravo. So for context, the year that data was collected, Bravo invested about $4.2 million on your behalf. And the sector turned that into a 3-to-1 direct return on local tax revenue and a 70-to-1 return on investment in total economic impact. In addition, the 5,439 jobs, those are inherently local. Those are people who live here, work here, entertain here. So I think it's clear from this that investing in the arts is essential to the economy in addition to being essential to social cohesion. Talking a little bit about tourism, Pete's got it. Pete's driving now. Pete's driving now.
This is the technology.
Also want to call to your attention that arts and culture are a tremendous tourism driver. It is really important to keep in mind that from the organizations that are able to track their attendance that Bravo supports, more than 1 million paid attendees participated in 2023 and 2024. Of those, more than 345,000 were from outside the metro. From the data collected, audience surveys, we know that 67% of those non-local attendees would not have come except for the arts and culture they were here to attend. So they weren't coming for a sporting event or to work. They came specifically for the event they were attending. We also,
For example, biggest contributor to that number are who?
Civic Center, I'm sure.
yeah, Des Moines Performing Arts, the zoo, the Science Center, Living History Farms, the opera, lots of tourism. They all have sort of a different metric on what their tourism number is, but it's pretty substantial. And you'd be surprised some of the smaller ones that are bringing, obviously the Des Moines Arts Festival brings a lot of people in from out of town. So that's not necessarily considered one that has a bricks and mortar infrastructure. We also know that the local attendees care about having things that local attendees, 41.5% reported that they would have traveled to a different community to attend a similar arts event. Our residents will go somewhere else to spend their money if Central Iowa does not have a vibrant arts and culture scene. So moving in specifically to the Clive engagement, you can go, it's gonna zoom in for me. There you go. One there, I think we're good there. Thanks, Pete. One more. As a regional entity, we were really not designed to track the local impact. We don't have capacity to get that information, but we know that that's incredibly important to you. So I do want to share that our regional investment strategy has benefited residents of the city of Clive. I think if you click it 2, maybe 3 more times, you can just do all 3. Clive resident participation in Bravo funded programming closely tracks with community size. You can see that Clive residents make up about 3% of the metro population, and they make up about 4% of total paid attendees to Bravo funded organizations. Investment from the city of Clive also makes up about 4% of Bravo's annual revenue. In the last 5 years, we can also say that we have funded 100% of eligible applications received from the city of Clive, resulting in more than $120,000 in public art grant funding to the city of Clive and $40,000 in Passport to Culture funding to the West Des Moines Community School District, but that's serving students in your community as well.
For those grant recipients from Clive this year, Sally. Can you share that with us?
Should have had that, and I'm sorry, I don't have it handy. I don't know if you have the one
We
pager.
received 2 different grants, one for the mural that we're gonna put on the back of the Harbach Center. That was 15,000, Richard? 10.
13.
13, I couldn't remember, I know it was in that range. And I can report on that we've received 16 different submissions, actually, for that particular mural, which that number surprised us. One of them actually is a teacher at Crestview, by the way, which I think is kind of a cool little local connection. The big one is related to the major art piece that will be installed at Greenbelt Landing. So that is part of the Icon Bravo collaboration. I think that was 125,000, and that is the very large $250,000 piece that we're doing.
That's the biggest contribute we've ever received, isn't that?
The 125, it's probably up there. I think I think it's 125.
I think that's the biggest one.
I think that's
We got art along the trail for years, didn't we?
Yeah, so that was a part of the program. That was a much smaller number annually.
8, 9, 10.
One thing I would note too is the last 2 years in particular on the graph that Sally was showing, you notice that public art, the red and the blue lines have increased. Those are more for the local, or the coming back to the city organizations in a lot of cases outside of the operating grant. So that replaced some of the operating grant dollars that we got for like Art Along the Trail is now going to more capital projects. And we've been definitely benefiting from that. And with the Greenbelt Landing one going to be the biggest kind of paramount piece. That's a collaboration of both NCMIC Group, which was 100,000, 125,000 from Bravo, and Icon, and the 25,000 from our own local funds to make that. It'll be the largest art commission that we've ever done in the city of Clyde by 2-fold, almost 3-fold.
that $250,000 piece that you approved about 3 months ago, 2 months ago.
It's kind of up in the air. It looks like.
Yeah, the artist from Toronto is doing that one. Yeah. Yeah, we're really excited about that piece.
Great. I also want to report that Clive residents accounted for 22,000 plus paid visits to the organizations that Bravo is supporting. So it's a pretty substantial number for the community. More than 1,500 memberships sold to residents of the city of Clive, and more than 2,250 students benefited specifically from outreach programs to Clive from our organization. So again, every resident benefits from investments in Bravo and the regional work that we do. Knowing that we're facing difficult times and cities are facing immense pressures and have a huge need for fiscal accountability, we understand that may result in revisions to Bravo's funding formula. I do want to be clear that any changes to that funding formula are likely to impact the ability of the organizations we support to provide affordable and accessible programs. Bravo has virtually no ability to replace any lost hotel motel tax funding, and we operate with such a low administrative overhead, there is virtually no way for us to absorb any of that impact internally. It is all going to have to be passed through to the organizations that we support. So we know that costs for providing programs already really exceed what the organizations are able to charge. It's likely we're going to see higher ticket prices for residents, fewer free programs, fewer local programs, fewer youth programs. I just want to be clear that any reductions in funding to Bravo will likely mean significant changes to access and affordability for residents of the region. And new funding is unlikely to be found. Some of the potential ways we would like to continue to work with you to make sure that we are maintaining our regional value proposition, that this is not a death knell, this is an opportunity to explore how to be more efficient in the new climate. We do think that there are ways to work together to talk about, get creative and think about possibly changing our eligibility criteria. Should it be bigger? Should it be smaller? Should it be restricted to only 501Cs? Should we have more pathways for direct dollars back to the cities for programming that you think is important? We're always having those conversations, but I think there's a different angle to it now, and we look forward to that conversation. I think we also may have to look at our investment pathways. Are there other, is the public art grant program something that's really working? Do we need to pay more attention to programs like that are meeting new needs from the region? I don't know, but we want to continue to make sure that we're being responsive and relevant. I also think there's a way to be creative with our existing cultural partners. I'm going to use a specific example, which I don't like to do because I don't like to plant seeds, but we fund an organization called City Sounds, and they do really cool pianos. They put art on the pianos, and then they put those pianos in public places where so anyone can show up, a resident or whatever can play. There's one right outside the partnership office right now, and often I'll hear them playing when I'm in meetings there. I don't know if that would be something Clive would be interested in, but why create your own public piano program? Why wouldn't we just invest more in City Sounds so that they could scale up and have a piano in Clive? They know what they're doing. They have the infrastructure in place. They have the ideas. Are there ways we can work with our existing cultural partners to get more programming in local communities as a way of meeting your needs and maintaining our commitment to the region? So I'm not saying
Sally,
that's
I appreciate your concept on that, but I can assure you that public piano playing has never showed up on a radar for our strategic planning session. I understand where you're going.
But who knew? I knew maybe just you didn't know it was a possibility. Maybe that's why it didn't show up.
Maybe.
Regardless, I would love the opportunity to continue to engage in discussions. I, again, understand that there may be changes that hopefully none of us feel great about, but that we can live with and that we can use as an opportunity to adapt and evolve. So I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here. Thank you again, Councilmember Judkins, for your service. I am happy to take any further follow-up questions. You've been very generous with your time.
Michael?
You mentioned, should you restrict it to only 501c3s? Are you now giving donations to private corporations?
No, sir. We are restricted to 501Cs.
Oh, I thought I heard you said, should we in the future think of restricting our donations to only 501c3s?
We are currently only 501c3. And we will fund 501cs, not just C3s, but 501cs. The challenge is, and I'll use Clive as an example, you don't have very many eligible 501cs. So if you're going to measure your relationship with Bravo based on how much money comes back directly to the city of Clive, I have no pathway because of our eligibility requirements. I couldn't fund you if I wanted to. So is there a possibility of looking at ways for communities that have a limited number of 501cs? We don't want you to create a nonprofit organization simply so that you can get funding from Bravo. But I know you need money in your community and there are potential local arts priorities beyond having your own piano. We have no pathway to make that happen. So I'm saying, what can we explore to help you meet your needs for local arts programming within our existing environment?
Yeah, but that's what would, and I do appreciate all this. I do it for the work you're doing and regionally as well. And I think it shows with the programs, large and small. The piano analogy is an okay one to use though, so let's use that. It's okay to come to organizations or come to your donors or who's putting the money in, i.e. the cities, the towns, preemptively, ahead of time, to say, do you want a piano program? We've never been asked that I know of.
Yeah.
So to say it now, when the restrictions are coming, right, and the numbers are coming, to say, let's look at some of these, why not come ahead of time? It's like when I'm negotiating my day job, and somebody says, well, if I knew you were leaving us as a vendor, I would have lowered our prices. I said, well, now you just made it so for sure I'm leaving, right? Because if you could have lowered the prices, you should have come to me and said you're going to lower your prices proactively to keep me as a customer. So that's a big piece, right? Why not ahead of time to say, you know, our pianos are only in these areas.
Yeah.
Why not branch out?
Yeah.
Show that value a little bit more with your organization, your 86 or 100 some organizations doing work here too.
Sure.
Not just because they're in Des Moines or what have you.
I think that's a fair question. And again, I think everything is about balance, right? We have also been very efficient with our administrative costs, and we are a staff of 4 running 3 grant programs for 87 organizations and 17 communities. And we operate as efficiently as we possibly can. It will take more administrative for us to make those connections and to be thinking about that. If that's the type of role we're going to play, we're evolving too. And so if that is a need, we would love to explore how we allocate staff time differently than how we're allocating it now, so that we can do more of those connections and build more of those relationships and understand more of the local needs across the board.
But to me, you give it to that entity, right? That's their wheelhouse. Whoever's doing the pianos, that's not yours. Let's just say, hey, why don't you go talk to 6 other communities that are in our portfolio?
They don't even have a staff. They're a totally volunteer-run organization.
So you did all the pianos for all the.
No, they get volunteers to do all the pianos. There's just not a lot of capacity in a lot of these organizations to extend. And that's a great role that Bravo plays, right? We are a partner. We do a lot of that connecting. It's just, it has not been intentional. And clearly,
No, I don't think that's right.
yeah, it's something we can look at.
Value added.
I think it's a great value add.
I mean, I think you run a great program. No question that. But
Thanks.
Sally, past years, you've given us more of a breakdown as a stakeholder in Bravo of the organizations that you donate to and the amounts that you donate to. I haven't seen that in several years. Can you share that information with us?
Absolutely. I don't have it
I
handy,
understand.
but I will absolutely follow up and send it
It's just
to.
been several years since we've seen that.
I think you have it, Matt. It was on the 1-pager that I sent. It was on the backside of the 1-pager, the 5-year history of funding for the city of Clive.
I don't want to see just
Yep.
City Clyde. I
He's
wanna
thinking the
see
whole-
Oh, sorry. Yes, absolutely. Yep, sure.
And that's in the annual audit every year.
Yep.
It's on your website.
It's on our website and we send it to the city every year, but I'm happy to send a
You can share
consolidated
that.
copy.
Sure.
No problem.
And it could be.
Can I go 5 years? Like, is that a far back enough?
One.
Okay.
I just like to say, for a number of years, we were represented by Scott Shapsina on the Bravo board, and he may have shared it directly with us
He might
where I
have.
haven't been. I don't know. I've tried to kind of work that through that, but I can assure you that Sally and her team during the years I've been serving have been very focused on wanting to know opportunities in Clyde. And our historical museum project was one that always did receive funding. And I do appreciate that she's come every year to try to help us be good ambassadors for Bravo, to be keeping our eyes and ears open too. So, you know, I'll take some blame for it, but all of us can keep our eyes and ears open for opportunities for sure. But one question I wanted to ask is, we know we're in an environment where a number of federal grant sources are being reduced. And in my view, the local support becomes ever more important. It's kind of a shrinking pie from all sources. Can you comment on that, on what you're hearing from some of our Bravo funded entities, how they're being impacted?
Yeah, not a lot of our organizations rely on a lot of federal funding. The ones that are getting federal funding are getting mixed messages. Many of the contracts are reimbursable contracts. So if you don't already have the receipts in, are you gonna get payment? We do have an organization that we know that has a grant that they haven't started yet, but it's a reimbursable contract, so they're debating whether to even start the project or not. So I think it is going to, at this point, gum things up, for lack of a better phrase. But I have not heard from any organizations for whom this is going to be crippling yet. It will be many, many things still to be determined. But I think you're right, Susan. I serve on a national organization, the Urban Arts Coalition. 60 of the people like me from the largest cities across the country, and all of them, San Diego, Houston, Phoenix, Cleveland, you know, California, everybody in California, their focus on the local is immense. And as local arts agency representatives, we are all looking at how are we gonna fill any gaps?
So Sally, thanks for being here, first of all, and for your presentation. You know, I think it's fair to say that we have always supported you guys and many of the regional entities, and that continues, I think, and that's been proven out. With that said, we all know what some of the local regional pressure is
Yes.
on finances, and we've seen some entities drop off. Some of that is obviously economic. Some of it, though, also plays into there are certain organizations that Bravo may support that they don't agree with. And that plays into it. So it's not 100% economic,
Sure.
right? There are some other factors involved there. And so I guess my question to you is, have you guys as a board or as a staff thought about ways where you could allow communities to opt out of supporting certain institutions if they disagree with them fundamentally? I know you have a single general operating fund, so that makes it, that makes it difficult. Whether it's an accounting thing or if it's just a messaging thing where you can say, hey, as a community, if we get asked by our constituents, our dollars are not going towards something that we may fundamentally disagree with.
Yeah.
Has that been thought of? Because I think, again, that's part of some of the decision. I've talked to some of these leaders, some of these other communities. That was a big part of it. It's not just the financial pressure that would be.
Yeah, for sure. So yes, I think everything's on the table. I think I would be foolish to close any doors about any conversation at this point. I will say it's been, and perhaps shame on me, we were a little surprised at the swiftness with which the change in Our relationship with a lot of our cities, I come every year and everyone says, we appreciate you and you're doing a good job. And these pressures are coming to you as cities quickly, and that is flowing to us very quickly. We might have been on our back foot and not quite as prepared to respond to the financial considerations, which has also shown a light on the fact that it may not be just financial. This is every vote on every slate for the 11 years I've been at Bravo, every grant we've ever awarded has been unanimous. I was unaware until recently that there were concerns about some of the organizations that we're supporting. So I think it's going to take us some time to figure out if that's a model we can adopt. But I am telling you, I think we should talk about it and see whether that's really a direction that cities want to go. And then Bravo and our board will have to decide whether that's something we can deliver.
I would encourage you to have those conversations. Where that ends up, I don't know, but I think that could have an impact.
I think it would be super helpful if we could get some line of sight to which organizations are concerning to which communities, because that would help. That would then help us think about, is it budget sized? Is it geography? Is it like, what are the things that make an organization unpalatable to a community? And then we will get creative. That's our whole job. We will get creative.
First, I heard of it, so I'm shocked as
Really?
a Bravo representative to have not had you tell me
Well,
that,
yeah,
to
and-
be
and
honest
I
with you. I
probably
don't want
should
to
have.
fight about it.
no, that's fine.
No, I've never been encouraged to bring anything.
No, I
Because I will bring anything that any of you bring to me, to Sally. That has always been that way since I took over. for
I'm not
Sally, so-
speaking for us, Susan.
But you've said that people
I've
have
spoken
talked
to
to
some
you.
other leaders in other
And
communities.
I would have appreciated hearing about that, so.
So on that, so Sally, you said you bring a slate of names that literally is a slate, 50 names or whatever, as one vote. Inherently a flaw in that as well, right? Because if there's one or two in there, but I want the other 48, I'm gonna vote on the 48, right? And so I'm not saying how to do it. I'm hearing Ted, I'm hearing others saying, perhaps I think it's messy, but the city's gonna have that slate of 50 and they get a circle, or whatever, and then it comes back to you. But when you do it as a slate, it's all or nothing. That's an interesting one because you gotta decide, I imagine the board did the slate, made the slate, or who makes up the slate before. it
We
goes-
evaluate.
Every board member is
recommendations
invited
based
to
on-
read every single application, and every board member has the opportunity to be on a panel to review any application that they want to review. We do give many opportunities for voice before the slate is presented, and to date, that has not come up as part of our process.
And there could be a situation where, once you start to open that, people vote for the things that are within their community, and that's not going to very well apply
That's right.
if that were the case, so.
Well, I see it, I see a compromise here somewhere that you could let the city, because if that's how they're voting is by the names you're putting on the slate, then you just lost funding for those cities. I don't know how else you do it other than to find out if that's why, right? And truly why.
These are very new conversations. I've been in the position for 11 years, and these are very new questions being asked. We are a publicly funded organization. We don't move a whole lot faster than the tools we have in front of us. So we are eager to respond, but we need the information and we need it back from you. It has to be a dialogue, and we are open to that conversation at such a point as it feels relevant to bring it up.
And we'd have to figure out, how do we pull the community? What is the community? It's not us. We do get a chance to hear from people in the community. To me, it has spoken volumes to know what residents of the community are participating in, that kind of thing. But I think we'd have to find a way to evaluate that isn't our own ideology.
But I just, sorry, you're in the middle of something now. I don't know, I don't agree with that statement only because I'm fine with going to the community and letting them pick. But in the 13 years I have been here, it's never even come to us, let alone the community. So to say if there's little change, let's go out to the masses is a bit of an extreme at the first, where you can say, bring it to the council perhaps, because it is a representation of the community. I have no problem putting it in a community, but to jump from no involvement at all from the council or the community to say it has to go to the community, because today the fact is you have one individual on the council that's making that decision, right? But now you're saying from that one person to go to, how many thousands do we have in the city?
That's 20.
20,000 people. That's a bit of a play on, can it actually be done, and logistically be done and all that. Let's find an in between there before we jump to an extreme, is what I'd say. But
For any of the regional elections that we support, it'd be the same conversation. How do we understand what the community needs? That's
well, because we should be talking to the community, knocking on doors, we should be talking to them and at events. I mean, that's.
I don't know. I don't think we do, but it's, like I said, this is the first time.
It's never come up in any conversations I've had with citizens. I can say
No,
that. but
I mean, this is all new, right?
It's all new.
This is not
Everything's
something
new.
that's a year or 3 years old. This is all, it's kind of percolating
Right.
now. So,
I have a follow-up. We know, there's pressure on the cities, right? And it's from the state house. It's gonna be from the federal too, right? But the one we can impact the most is the state. And then the most we can impact is our own town, right? And so it kind of goes to the general question I'm asking every one of the heads of these groups coming in is, how much has Bravo been up at the Capitol lobbying against some of these cuts and mandates and property tax, trickery and pullbacks and all these other things that are directly hurting your stakeholders, your investment group? How much have you been up there lobbying against the 2%, this? Maybe a lot, I just
Nope.
haven't been up there. I haven't
Nope.
seen you.
Nope. I have not been up there. Obviously, we work primarily through our board, and many corporate partners are represented at that table. We sit at the partnership table and the community foundation table and United Way, and actively involved with our 90 nonprofit partners, member of the Iowa Cultural Coalition, but have not had a direct conversation with legislators. Again, this is new. I'm not sure that's our role. And so
I disagree with you.
I'm not saying that it is or that it isn't. I'm saying that we've not done it before, and it is, we are trying to be thoughtful and careful with how we proceed. It is not entirely my decision to go up to the Capitol and lobby or advocate. It's new and I don't have it figured out yet. So fair question, and I don't have it figured
That
out
might
yet.
be a good dialogue with your board.
We are talking about it at our board
And I
regularly.
know you haven't done it before, and I
Yeah.
understand that these are new times.
Yep.
New situations, and they require new strategic tactics as
Yep.
well. And like it or not, it certainly could have a direct impact on your organization.
A lot of the advice that we're getting is that it won't matter. And so it is challenging. It is challenging to know how best to use time and resources. This is hugely important to Bravo and to the work that we do. The message we're getting from many legislators is that it is a very small fish on the bigger pile of things that are being dealt with right now. So we get direct counsel that says, don't go. We get counsel that says you have to go. We just don't know. And so I think there's opportunity. I'm not saying we've done it right or wrong. I agree. We do talk about it at the board table almost every meeting. But we may not have been as prepared or active as we could have been.
How much is the hotel motel tax of your entire budget? What the cities put in there, what is the percentage of that to your entire budget?
95% of our budget comes from hotel
So
motel
then I
taxes.
ask you, and this isn't a indictment of you, but perhaps of the board and some others is, then why are you going around asking the corporate world and others of what you should do at the Hill when your main investors, owners however you want to look at it, are straight being affected by what will trickle down to affect you. We need every bit of help we can get up at the Capitol, every voice, every person to say, this isn't going to only hurt the city and the residents of Clyde, right? And this is what I'm truly worried about. And we had this talk to the Des Moines Partnership too, and I yet to see them up there. And this is going to affect your budgets. And when we have to make a decision, and then we look around for partners, and we look around the rotunda and we say, hello, 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 anybody up there? You make your decision on where your money goes, right? So we don't think we're gonna win a whole lot up there either, but we have.
I agree. And again, invite, Councilmember Judkins is very active and engaged. We have one elected official from every community at our table. You all have a voice in every decision that is made. And so far, this hasn't been a priority for our board. So I agree, we have further discussion to have and look forward and appreciate the encouragement to revisit that in a more significant way.
And there has been some good conversation lately. It's helpful to have Matt McKinney as the chair currently from the West Des Moines City Council. And I would say at the last board meeting, we had some really important open conversation about it with multiples of the communities weighing in. I can also tell you some of the funded partners, and most specifically the Civic Center, have been active and making a point. They had an event where they invited legislators to come in and articulated the value to the state as well as the metro area at large on having a cultural institution like that. It was well attended.
Yeah.
I did feel like that was helpful and like seeing that.
I agree with that type of thing, right? Those 86 people up there fighting for their money, which is the hotel motel tax, which is given by the cities, which is being squeezed. And look, at the end of the day, it's going to be tough to say to our residents why we're backing out snow and mosquito spray and our bike trails, are busted and not, all that stuff. We've got to then say where our money's going, right? And I'm fully supportive of the organization. Don't get me wrong. But there are going to be some tough decisions if we continue to go down this road as municipalities by ourselves. And then later, the zoos and the civic centers and everybody else of those 100 groups say, oh crap, I wish I could have, I wish I would have. Okay. I don't want to take it to them. I think we're there. So.
Any other comments? Well, Sally, we really appreciate you coming in. I want to back you up to your initial slide. If you could remind us of what cities were around when Bravo was formed.
Oh, why do you guys always ask the ones I don't have at the tip of my finger?
Well,
Clive was one of them.
That's all I really.
Clive was one of them.
He was just fishing. for
Clive
that
was one of them.
And who was the representative from Clive at the time?
You
Was
might
it?
Oh, no, it was Scott.
Scott Circina, that's what I was gonna say, but then I failed, sorry.
I thought I was giving you a soft.
No, sorry, no, I know Scott was around at the beginning. Bob Brownell is our last original board member. So he's still serving with us, but lots of turnover, but lots of opportunity built from this really strong foundation that I will tell you is the envy of my colleagues around the country. There's a lot to be proud of, always opportunities to improve, and I look forward to continued dialogue. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Are we ready to move into consent? If so, I would take a resolution.
Approval. Second.
Motion and second on consent. Further discussion, seeing none, will the council please vote? And will the clerk please post those votes? Consent is passed by a vote of 4-0. Very good. Next up, we've got a public hearing on Douglas Parkway and Berkshire Parkway traffic signalization. I see Tim coming forward. Did we publish public notice?
Public hearing notice was published in the Des Moines Register on April 7th, 2025.
Thank you. Jim.
Thank you, Mayor. We received bids last week for a traffic signalization project at the intersection of Douglas Parkway and Berkshire Parkway. In addition to the signal installation, we'll be doing some minor pavement removal of both sidewalks and streets as part of the scope as well. Tabulation of the bids is included in your packet. We received 3 bids. All 3 were significantly under the engineer's estimate. As you recall, the city has purchased some of the equipment in advance with long lead times, with the hopes of turning the project around and having the signals active prior to the start of the 25-26 school year this fall. With all that in mind, we'll be recommending award to the low bidder, Iowa Signal, for the listed amount, and would be happy to answer any questions.
Question for Jim.
Move to close public hearing.
Second. Motion second, close the public hearing. Before we do so, is there anyone in the chamber who wishes to address the council on this issue, or anyone online? Seeing that there is no one, would the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? And public hearing is closed by a vote of 4-0.
Move the resolution approving plans and specifications.
Second. Motion second on plans and specs. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? That passes by a vote of 4-0.
Move to receive bids.
Second. Motion second to receive the bids. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? That passes by a vote of 4-0.
Move the resolution award the contract to Iowa Signal Incorporated for $235,174.
Second. Motion second on the resolution awarding contract. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that? That passes by a vote of 4-0. Thank you, Jeff. And
Good evening. Tonight we have before us the auxiliary use permit for Step Ahead Daycare and Preschool. They are moving to the building or proposing to move to the building just north of their current location. Pete has a graphic he's going to pull up here for us. That'll show that area, but they are going to be a little bit bigger in their building area they have. Though not really an expansion of the capacity with students by any significant amount. So you can see the most southern building there on the site plan or on the graphic is their current location. And then just across that private drive access is where they're proposing to go to the north. Which one's the pointer? So no, the green one. Okay. Here's where they're located today. And here's where they would be moving to with this proposed auxiliary use permit. There are 2 other tenants in this building that are on the first floor. The parking lot here is lower than it is at this one. So those 2 tenants will remain, and then they are proposing to take the entire top level for the daycare use. And so staff hasn't had any complaints or issues that we've been made aware of with the current location. The operations are largely the same. There's no need to extend staff capacity. And largely, it's literally the traffic will turn onto the same drive. They'll just turn here instead of going here to get.
Who are the tenants in 2555 and 16349?
16349 is Ducharme Dermatology, and 2555 has the Wagoner Pediatrics. Is that the? And Shaw Chiropractic. Yep. And then the one 2635, it's a Pinpoint Cosmetics, and I think Meraki Salon.
Then just south that you would see Weisenberg and Associates.
Yes.
And then Berkshire Dental, correct?
Yes.
The one
Yep.
back.
Exactly. Yep. So the one area that staff really had to bring to your attention with this request would be the outdoor play area. So you can see the existing play area today is located right here. So the owners are proposing to locate the play area generally in this green part of the site. That would be including putting a fence into part of that landscape buffer that is there today. This 25-foot buffer right here was established when the properties were platted and originally developed. So looking at the minimum area that would be required for that play area today for the number of students, in order to really make it very effective, would need to include going into the buffer in this area. The applicant has indicated they would be willing to enter into an agreement that, you know, they would need to restore the area if they vacated or any damage had happened to that, if that is allowed. Staff doesn't have really concerns with that proposal, given the location is not only next to a park, but also next to the parking lot next to the park.
Is that Country Club left?
Yes.
There?
So with that, if council is favorable towards that, we would bring forward whatever amendment would be needed for that declaration to the landscape buffer, or other agreements per your direction, to allow them to move forward with that. But so today it would just be formally approving the auxiliary use permit, and then giving us some direction on your preference for whether a fence could be permitted into that buffer space at all. They are intending to keep primarily the sod area, and they would not, at this point in time, be asking to remove any of the buffer trees. And then I've talked with Crystal, the owner here, and they're not overly concerned about kids trying to climb trees, given the age of the students that are in that area. It's not typically something that developmentally is happening with kids in that age range.
Any concerns from the neighbors?
Nope, staff did send notice, and we did get consent or acknowledgement back from the other tenants in the building. So we have not heard any concerns, anything formal, just had some questions from the other tenants, but once we explained the request, there was no additional comments.
Additional questions for Amanda? I think if we could just get a motion on.
I'll make a motion to approve the auxiliary use permit for Step Ed Childcare Preschool, 2635 Berkshire Parkway, Suite 200.
Second.
Second. All right, I think we'll go ahead and vote on that and then we'll clarify. All those in favor?
Aye.
Please vote. And if you're opposed, vote too. All right, that passes by a vote of 4-0. The general defense can go and confirm.
Yeah, did I read in the packet that if they do decide to leave, we want them to remove because they want that?
Yes, that's been staff's conversation so far, so we can bring back that and, you know, formal but simple agreement to lay out those expectations.
Okay, so do you need anything more than head nods? I think we've got those.
No, I think that sounds good.
All right,
All right,
thanks, Amanda.
thank you.
Can we, Amanda, can we see something also on that, the full playground? What's gonna happen there? Is it gonna be brought back to grass? You're losing a big grass area.
You know, that's definitely an answer I should have been prepared for tonight. I'm not sure if that's in the lease to restore the area.
Can I answer that?
Yes.
The current playground,
Come on.
Commissioner,
Identify
sorry.
yourself, please.
Can you tell this is my first one?
Okay.
The current
And
playground.
who are you?
I'm sorry, I'm Crystal Steffen. I'm the owner of Step Ahead Childcare Preschool. And the owner of 2635 Berkshire Parkway of the actual commercial property. So the current playground that we do have, we also have in our lease that we have to restore that back to the original state. So I recently just put in new 5-foot fence in there. It's not the full closed fence. And that fence will move over with me to this new playground, and then we restore that current playground to just the grassy area that it was. So,
Any other questions?
Did you used to have apple tree?
no,
Anybody else?
I swear my son went to.
on Hickman,
Yes.
it's now Cadence Academy. Crystal, yeah, she was also a Crystal there.
Ah,
So,
her name was Crystal Seaman.
there, yes, yes, she's actually not there anymore. So,
All right. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank you.
So I think we've got this matter taken care of now. We'll move on to Liz with Steel Bond.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So as you know, Standard & Poor maintained our bond issue, AAA. Of course, that provides our investors, right, with a quick and easy way to evaluate our credit rating. So tonight, Suzanne is here because we had a sale this morning. I'll let her kind of share all the really good news, but I really want to share my appreciation for PFM and Dorsey and Whitney, and of course, all of our staff that were involved in putting together the bond issuance. So with that, I'll let Suzanne kind of share her recommendation.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. Good to be with you. We went to market today for the annual CIP GEO bond issuance, $5,570,000. We received 3 bids, which is fewer than we have in the past. I'll get to market conditions at the end, but we received the right bids, which is the most important thing. Robert W. Baird was the winning bid today. That had the large 27-member selling syndicate, so that always helps. And then the second place bid was from FHN Financial Capital. I believe there might be a newer bidder from New York, and Huntington Securities out of Chicago, Illinois was the third bidder. We measure the success and our recommendation on true interest cost method, which we call a TIC. TIC from Robert W. Baird was 3.74, which is kind of like your APR rate, right? When you go do a car loan or something. 3.74, which is excellent pricing based on where AAA scale is right now. The second place bidder, FHN, was at 387. So 13 basis points over the winner, and then, third place even further out. We always kind of look at that spread. I talked a lot about how far apart the first and second place bidders are today. That's 13 basis points. That's sort of just a sign that the market isn't really sure what pricing needs to be. So we definitely got the best bid we could get by far from Robert W. Baird today. Very happy to see, and quite frankly, some of the best pricing we've seen in the last few weeks. We had some other bonds that have sold in the last couple of weeks that had tougher days in the market. We'll just say that.
13 points is a lot between first and second. Were you guys surprised at that fluctuation?
Well, the last bond sale that I personally did was 0.1. And so it was less than a basis point.
Usually it's a lot.
Usually it's very tight, but I think that the market tone is, the word I would use is uncertainty. The tariff talks, there's a lot of uncertainty in the market. There's a lot of bidders sitting out because they don't want to stick their neck out and buy these bonds and then have the market go up the next day. We've seen swings of 50 basis points within 2 or 3 days. And that's a lot in the municipal bond market. Usually it takes weeks to move 50 basis points. And so that's why,
Market was up today.
Market was up today. It was a good day. It was a very good day. I can't take any credit for that. Yeah. PFM can't take any credit for how the market moves, but it was an excellent day to be in the market. So, so that it's just, again, plan's good. We plan and do the best we can. Glad to have good results today. Glad to be under 4% in today's world. It's the first TIC we've had under 4 in the last few weeks. So very, very good news. And you priced just 16 basis points over the AAA scale on average today. And the range was 8 basis points to 34 basis points overall over the 12-year term. We were non-BQ today, which actually I think works in our favor. Banks, the bank qualified community is just on the sidelines right now. So we had the right deal, we had the right credit, we had just a great day in the market. So I'm very pleased. And I would say that just because there's so much uncertainty, obviously we did see a reduced number of bidders. 3 is a win. We've had some with 1. We've had deals with 1 bid. We've had deals with 2 bids. 4 is the most we've seen in the last month. And so it's just different times we're in, but I'm confident to say that Robert W. Baird really came to the table today and gave Clive the best possible rate we could get in the market today. So that is my recommendation to award to Robert W. Baird and Syndicate at a true interest cost of 3.7494%. Any questions?
Questions for Suzanne? Otherwise, I
Move the resolution.
Resolution from Ted, second. Second. Further discussion? Whoa. Eric. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote, and will the clerk please post that vote? And that passes by a vote of 4-0. Thank you, Suzanne. Utility rates, Liz.
Yeah, so tonight is the second consideration for the ordinances that are adjusting utility rates. We incorporated the 2% increase for water, 4% increase for sewer, and then 3% for stormwater. We have had no public comments since the last meeting as well. So staff recommends approval, excuse me.
Move that ordinance number 1159 in water rates, having been considered by the council, be voted on for passage prior to its final adoption.
Second.
Motion second on 1159. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? And that passes by a vote of 4 to
Thank
0.
you.
Move that ordinance number 1160, having been considered by the council, be voted on passage for its final adoption.
Second.
Motion second on ordinance 1160. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote? And will clerk please close that vote? That passes by a vote of 4 to 0.
Move that ordinance number 1161, having been considered by the council, be voted on for passage for its final adoption.
Second.
Motion second on ordinance 1161. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that? That passes by a vote of 4 to 0. Thank you, Liz.
Yeah.
Floods, Matt.
I'm going to kick this off tonight. So this is our annual flood preparedness mitigation update for the council. And as was discussed a little bit earlier tonight, we have constraints that are facing us at the state and federal level. Well, this is going to be primarily focused on the federal level for a big section of this. But a couple components, and we'll start off with Chief Garcia to talk about our flood tabletop exercise that we do every year, and then what we learned from that. We always are amending and adjusting our flood response plan. Of course, we're fully into flood season now as we head into May. And so this is a critical time where we're updating those plans, making adjustments. We learn something every year when we go through the tabletop exercise and new things that are coming up, even new technologies that we can utilize. Of course, we, have gone to a texting notification system and how we use that, in addition to Alert Iowa, some of our communications, drones, things like that. So there's been a lot of advancements over the years. And then we'll pivot to talk, Doug will talk quite a bit about flood mitigation. All the flood mitigation grants that are outstanding and a lot of the federal uncertainty that we have, and some pivots that Doug will talk about, to some opportunities with our state partners who've been really important to us here recently, that he'll talk about how we can still move some of these programs forward. And then lastly, Pete and I will hit on a letter to encourage our congressional delegation, and particularly timely with Councilmember Klein and Judkins going to DC here in a couple of weeks, about how we can maintain FEMA and the programs, because Clyde is positioned ourselves to benefit quite a bit in terms of helping our flood prone neighborhoods mitigate those efforts and potentially either be bought out or have other mitigation activities occur. FEMA is a critical partner in that, and that funding and that support and that technical assistance that they provide is really critical. And so we wanted to put together a support letter for that effort to share with our congressional delegation and reinforce that in a couple of weeks. So three-pronged approach here to flood mitigation tonight. We'll start off with Chief Garcia.
All right, Mayor, Council, thank you. I'm here, we're going to chat a little bit about our flood tabletop. If you're obviously aware, every year we do multiple classroom exercises where we do some updating to the flood plan, and then we do a full tabletop exercise with the entire city. This year on March 26th, we conducted our tabletop. What I got pointed out for you is a couple of the lessons learned or kind of to-dos that we gained from this year. One thing I was pretty excited about from this particular flood plan was we didn't do a whole lot of changes to it, which tells me that the plan by and large is a solid, fundamentally good plan. And I'll attest a lot of that is due to what Doug will be talking about as we continue to do these the flood buyout plans. It makes our lift on the city side much easier. So those efforts are definitely being seen into the exercise that we're doing. A couple of the key topics so that we kind of pointed out this year was, one was the communication side of it, which is the addition of Molly, our communication specialist, to our plan. Over incidents in the past within Polk County, there's always kind of an element of communication that's broken, and it's from Polk County emergency management to the operations down at the city level. So this year we talked a lot with Pete, and in our plan this year is to kind of divide and conquer that, is to put one communication staff member at the Polk County EOC and have one here. That way we can relay good information out to our media partners while updating our city website live here as well. So that division of services really is going to service very well into an event, which kind of leads into the next one. But one of the lessons learned every year, anytime any incident happens, is people want good communication, and they want fast communication, and they want consistent communication. So kind of developing this more robust communications plan is something that we took a hard look at. And we think with the addition of kind of dividing those two people up will definitely help that. Which again, leading into the third one is staffing the emergency operations center downtown. If we can have that liaison with Polk County Emergency Management directly here, it's going to help the communication lines faster, more accurate, that we can get those out to the residents. The drone technology that we have in the city is rapidly evolving. So implementing a good operations plan for our drone will be a massive asset to us during a flood. With the evolution of the flood-prone buyout programs, Doug will talk a lot more about that. But again, that's chipping away at a lot of our lift on our end when it comes to an actual flood. The evolution of the Harbach Center becoming a staging area. It's right where we kind of need it to be. And we were a little bit hesitant in the past of actually implementing that particular element to it, but we feel comfortable now with actually putting that into the plan. The big new one this year, and it's being really rolled out as we speak, is the new Polk County Emergency, the Damage Assessment Tool, which is the Orion app. And what's really neat about that is it's cutting down our damage assessment necessities drastically. What used to take people weeks on end is taking hours. So we're able to do a great damage assessment throughout the city in a fraction of time. It also has a fantastic dashboard that we can use in the EOC to truly get a live snapshot of what's going on within the city real time. And then we're also looking at future considerations of incorporating some dam failures and operational plan for those dam failures. Did a lot of work with the dams a couple years ago with the DNR, and we're looking at a good and better way to implement those into the flood tabletop and continuing to evolve that particular plan into the city's flood mitigation and operations plan. So those were this year kind of some of the highlights that we have implemented, and a couple things that we're going to continue to work on and build out to better our response when it comes to a flood. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that the council may or may have.
Your Honor, if I could add just
Yes,
two quick
please.
things to it is, number one, this is the only action item we have in terms of you actually adopting the updated flood response and recovery plan. So we'll definitely act on that and on to the next topics when the council's ready. The second piece that I'll mention too is one huge component of our flood response plan. This kind of ties into some of the federal challenges that we're going to be facing is the National Weather Service and their forecasting is critical to how we respond to floods. And they're now facing substantial cuts at the federal level. We haven't heard of specific local impacts to the local Des Moines office, who I can tell you in the midst of rain events, substantial rain events, I'm regularly messaging with them. So that is something we're definitely keeping an eye on, because that impacts our flood response. If we can get accurate and timely forecasts from them, that drives our entire flood response plan. So that it gives me some pause, I'll be honest, to see what might be happening, particularly as those that forecasting capacity, if it's effective or reduced, can definitely affect our flood response and then timeliness. We have some other tools. Our local gauge system is a big part of that, but we definitely that we work with West Des Moines, and the National Weather Service on. But their ability to give us hydrodynamic models in real time to forecast, what's the creek going to be at the interstate, that drives our entire response plan. So that's something that we're definitely cautious about right now and monitoring pretty regularly.
Yes, sir.
So a couple of good follow-up questions here for you, Clay. First, I appreciate the presentation. You guys do such a good job, and a lot of communities don't do this type of board gaming on tabletop exercises. They really go through a lot of real life questions on, probably a lot of these are from the past, right? Somebody doesn't want to evacuate, now you have to evacuate, whatever it would be. Talk about the communications plan on that. How do we incorporate more AI texting into communications out to our residents?
So we talked a little bit this year on Greenie's availability with this, which is one of our kind of to-dos. It's more of an operational to-do. We want to test out Greenie to make sure Greenie's pulling the right information. And I know Pete, it's on his radar to test that out. Any other AI tools? I'm not real sure yet. Again, I would love to.
We're
We're still learning a lot with it. If there's a feature that could be an asset to the plan, we would absolutely look at it and incorporate it to the best that we can. Any flooding is such a dynamic experience for us, and any way we can lighten that load, personally, I'd be all for it. So.
Pete, your thoughts?
Yeah, Councilman, and so twofold. First, the first thing we want people to sign up for getting text alerts is Alert Iowa. They want people to associate that as expert, reliable source, because those are texts that are being sent by first responders, professional emergency management professionals. Greenie comes alongside that tool though, yet with more Clive specific information. So the first question we get as soon as the flooding starts is, when can I get the debris on the curb? That's a great thing for Greenie to be able to start texting about early. However, that's when we're doing the one-way text. A lot of people are going to go to cityofclyde.com or just use the Greenie text that they may keep running in their chat messages and say, hey, Greenie, where can I start putting this stuff out on the curb? Greenie only knows what to say there after Greenie has studied cityofclyde.com. That's its big data source. So the way that we're going to deploy this is building an incident page. We've already got a sort of a stable one up there now that has all of the sign up for alerts information. When an event starts, we will then evolve that page into something that is incident specific. So the floods of certain day, time, and year. We will then keep building out all the information, one place where everybody can go. We'll always want to say, go to cityofclyde.com. But then once they're there, they'll click on the red banner and immediately get to go to this key information page. We'll call up our partners at CityBot as the event is starting and tell them, we need Greenie now to scrub or read the site with this amount of frequency. So because it's a dynamic event, as we keep putting new stuff up there, we want Greenie to have that in her knowledge base so she can give good answers to folks. Good example of this, the CityBot works with the city of New Orleans. So when they have hurricanes that come through, they build a page, we kind of modeled our page off of theirs. They call it NOLA Ready, we call ours Clive Ready. And then they have their CityBot tool, read with a lot of frequency. So as people keep coming back to it, they get the right information. I think that'll work well for City of Clive as well.
Quick follow-up. When part of the key thing is deploying aqua dams, how to incorporate the aqua dams here in Clive into a tabletop exercise, or can we? What's our practice moving forward to measure the effectiveness of those, the staff's ability to deploy those?
Yeah. We had a discussion specifically on that. They do have routine where they'll go up off time and fill them up, kind of run through that. This year we talked about, possibly putting them on some kind of a rotation, but also looking out there to see if there's a different alternative to an aqua dam. I don't know the price, but I think it's fairly steep on them. And obviously time is probably their biggest enemy. So that was a discussion this year, but we're looking at probably more of an internal policy of when are we going to look at them, how often we're going to test them, how often we're going to replace them, are we going to have any kind of backups to them along those lines. But every year those kind of get brought up a little bit, and some internal conversations that we're still having in terms of dialing that in.
I would add on to that last year, I don't know, Jeff, you want to comment on this, the Public Works crew actually fully tested the aqua dam. We didn't fill it all the way up, but we found a time that wasn't inconvenient for winter to close one of the access points. It was like a Saturday morning, I think it was in June last year, where we had some relatively new staff on our Public Works crew at the time that hadn't even seen them deployed before.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you want to comment on how we tested it, how we actually videoed it, created some training manuals for the, particularly the new, but I'll let Jeff.
Yeah, we got a new employee that really likes to create videos. Took some video with the drone and used it, put it together. But basically it was a training exercise. We had a lot of new people. We haven't had a flood event and deployed them since 2018. Over half our staff is new in the last 4 years. So we decided to take that opportunity and go out and show them how it works, what to expect, give them an idea. With those aqua dams, there's two things. One is you need to make sure they're ready, but also you don't want to wear them out just practicing because they're not cheap. We did fill one up. After we fill it up, we take it back to the Public Works building. We fill it up with air. We actually have people walk through it. We look for holes, patch it, get it ready for the next time. There's actually 2 chambers in there, so you gotta get both of them ready. But yeah, it was a great opportunity for us. And as Clay was saying, we've talked about maybe, let's get 1 spare, if we need all 3 of them, get them on a rotation schedule, make sure we, in case one fails or something, when we go to deploy it, it's ready. Yeah, we do try to stay prepared, and Clay's done a good job with the exercises of trying to get us to think about how soon we have to go out, when we need to be ahead of it to be prepared and get them deployed before the water gets there.
I love to hear that kind of proactive thinking on that. The last thing you want is to have staff that's untrained, that's never seen those. I know it's been a few years. And the other last thing is to try to have staff in a flood situation that's dark out, pouring down rain, you get a lot of calls coming in, so a lot of anxiety. So good for you guys for proactively testing these out on, in a calm environment as opposed to a difficult environment. One more quick question, Dallas County Emergency Operations Center, you guys incorporate those at all into your planning exercises?
We typically have not. This year we did talk to AJ with Polk County. Next year, we're going to try to incorporate physically them more. We have not. Dallas County reached out to me, wanting our flood plan to look at and I think probably model after. So I think that's a testament to where that is. But historically, to my knowledge, we've not utilized them in a training top exercise.
Might be a good opportunity just to update them on what you guys are doing. I've seen you talked about sharing your flood plan, but just making sure as we look at these collaborative measures with surrounding communities, they might be able to learn some things. You guys, great operation, Clay, but also vice versa, right? So.
Yeah, both Dallas and Polk County have incredible staff, and they would absolutely be an asset to us in any event that we have. So we did talk with AJ a little bit, and we can with AJ about incorporating them into, see, you can't forget it.
On this tabletop too, we actually had the City of Urbandale command staff, fire command staff observing.
Perfect.
I think there was 3 of them.
Mhm.
I knew the chief was there and a couple assistant chiefs. They were curious to see, look at our plan and then see how we actually implement it. We had some dialogue with them with the route because they're, in a lot of cases, even though we're pivoting a little bit and looking at the Harbach Center as being maybe the initial short-term shelter for folks, and Giovanetti Shelter is the one that they've always offered to us. That's still our contingency. But if we're facing an event, we're relying upon them, especially with our closest unit response and Station 43 relationship, that they're probably backing up our calls at that time. If we have other fire calls or other EMS calls in the community, why our staffs are tied up with evacuations in a major flood event. So it was really good for them to see kind of how much resources we're bringing to bear. And as we saw in 2018, we got so far down the list on boats, we had the DNR staff helping us evacuate people. And so we, when these events get pretty substantial, we need to rely upon our neighbors to help us out.
And that's a
us to
great
do the
segue.
same for them.
Appreciate that. It's a great segue. My final question, I promise. City of Windsor Heights, I know I was having a good conversation with the mayor of Windsor Heights, and he'd expressed some interest on, as obviously we share Walnut Creek, a lot of the same pain points along those low areas right there. Do they have any involvement in this? I think that'd be a good idea to have them at least have an observer there to observe our plan and see where they could play a role.
So they this year hired the same consultant that we use, Chief Rowe. So he's been working with them to develop a very similar plan. And we had discussed next year, even possibly trying to do a joint flood training with this, because absolutely it affects them.
I don't see any downside to that.
There's
guys.
not.
I really don't, especially
There's
with
not.
the proximity to the danger zone in that area. It just makes sense to collaborate as much as possible.
Our plan, by and large, I think it's something to be incredibly proud of, and it's something for others to model after. And now I think we're to a solid point with the buyout program, and the plan is to keep growing it to do better. And I think that's a next big step, is utilizing neighbors and the county and the emergency management and those resources.
Great.
Any other questions for the chief? Otherwise, we're
I
looking for
do.
the resolution. Oh,
How, with the buyout program and such, we have bought a lot to the north. Yeah, pretty much taken out that whole north side, Briggs not in operation. have in that tabletop, if we're given that consideration to put those bladders up in north, the Little Walnut Creek coming in, floods. Or maybe we're north, floods perhaps worse or different than the main one, right, channel. Putting those up to block Whittier Group, to save the Whittier Group side in a case like that, right? I mean, you're buying everything out on the other side, don't have the money to buy the south side, to me would be something we would look at, new philosophy perhaps, right? Protecting what you have left instead of letting that.
I'm not aware of that particular conversation, if it's been had, or it's definitely something we can look at moving forward. And
It's not a bladder related question. I'm happy to get into the hydraulics of what's occurring, but it has very little to do.
We saw it, right? I mean, we saw it in the last flood. I was down there. We saw it when the bladders didn't go up.
Sure.
In a timely fashion, arguably saved Whittier.
Again, happy to get into hydraulics part of the conversation, but again, the bladders themselves aren't gonna make a difference, and even more specifically, aren't gonna make a difference simply moving them over to North Walnut Creek. We've added an earthen mound to try to reduce some of the contributions from North Walnut Creek into the bird bath area. But again, the best we can do is just kind of modulate some of the smaller flows. The issues that we're talking about and having to deal with on the large scale, the bladder is going to make no difference for the flooding condition in that University
But you're not
Boulevard.
talking literally moving those to over closer to the river, to the creek. I'm saying leave them right where they're at, right where you use them on a normal basis.
Yes, but again, those bladders only provide a protection at best to a 50-year flood event, right? So once we're talking about the large flood event in this area, no bladder, no earthen mound, no anything else that we can throw out there and try to put in the way is gonna make one lick of difference.
So that might be a bigger discussion I'd like to be involved in because, and I get it offline because it would have made a difference in that case. I'm sure of it. In the case of saying it won't hurt, it won't help the 100,000 year, agree with you, Bob. But then why even put them up? Why even practice? Why even own extra? If that's the philosophy of the big ones coming, it won't matter what the bladder is, then don't put personnel down there. Don't risk life, don't risk equipment, and we don't need extra ones. If we're going to try to hit those small events like that one, which was a flash flood on the north, Walnut Creek, which was odd, right? But could happen more often in the future. That protecting the south does make sense to me, and then perhaps you could talk me out of that in a whiteboarding deal at that level, but I'd like to be.
Yeah, so in
set that
the
up.
2018 event, it was a timing thing, right? North Walnut Creek went first, flooded at a 500-year level first, and we actually had the aqua dams up, and it held water from going to Whittier on University Boulevard. And then it went down, and then Walnut Creek went up, and then the water hit the aqua dam on the other side. We left them up, and it protected, it went higher, it got higher against the aqua dams on Walnut Creek side. It was a shorter lived one on North Walnut Creek side. So there is, some dynamics to that. That was kind of a typically in most events, if North Walnut Creek's gonna flood, Walnut Creek's gonna flood in most events because of the backfill, where the water is flowing. There could be occasions where we just have a flash flood on North Walnut Creek and very minor flooding on Walnut Creek. And so that is why we do have a specific North Walnut Creek section of this plan that deals with that.
I'm just asking for consideration now that we have bought most of the north, right? Our risks are much less. We used to have an apartment down there. We used to have all those things factored in, and I'm on
Right.
board with that, right? That had to happen. Things have changed.
Shift
right?
priority.
We have very few houses.
Mhm.
Yeah.
very few businesses, if any, on the north side that are left. So in that case, I'd argue you put that bladder up, you protect it coming from the north. As the other one rises, this one, lower that bladder, let it back out into the north side of the root of the neighborhood and let that water come back out, right? You're protecting who's left down there that we don't have the money. And it's more than just winter,
Mhm.
several places. So I hope we're tabletoping that type of scenario, being ready to inflate, deflate, and play the game a little.
It's gonna have their work, their preparedness, their response plan is not gonna answer your question. However, the next thing we're gonna talk about, the adversity mitigation plan. Happy to get deeper into that.
Not tonight.
Happy to. But more specifically, yes, we are evaluating a multitude of different options, different scenarios. That area, again, you all know, it's a very complex area because of the confluence of two relatively large water bodies. And you're gonna hear me say this a couple times. There are gonna be choices to be made as to who receives the most benefits. The benefits we cannot accrue equally to everyone. So there are going to be some folks, some neighborhood areas that are benefited more than others. And that type of decision-making is going to have to be made in the near-ish future for you folks.
If we go in depth, I would like, I'm gonna choose Chief Rayburn to be my proxy. Make fun, if he can stay for me. Relay the information for me later in notes, if you could.
So any further questions for the chief? Otherwise, I'm looking for a resolution.
Move, go ahead, Ted.
I'll move the resolution.
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, would the council please vote and clerk please post that vote.
Right, that's not going on.
And that passes by a vote of 4-0. Doug, it's your turn. Wow. We don't have all of them.
Keep an eye here.
Rayburn, you're up, I'm out of here. Take a seat in front if you want.
Second.
All right, start with kind of the happier side of things, if you will. A lot of the work, a lot of the folks that have been up here and talked to you before I'm talking with you have been doing a lot of really good stuff, as you're all aware, to make sure the community is prepared to deal with flooding. And I think it's been kind of interesting to be able to take advantage of the work that all the folks have been doing and synthesize it in a way that allows us to be ranked, to show that we are being good community partners, being very forward thinking in terms of how we can be sustainable, resilient to these changing environmental conditions that we're dealing with. Just recently, we have been awarded a Class 4 community rating system ranking. It is something to really be quite proud of. I think the quick math is that puts us in the top 27 communities out of 1,500 in the country with respect to our capabilities to manage and keep our residents safe. Within the specific Region 7 of FEMA, which is Iowa, Missouri, Nebraska, and Kansas, we were in the top of that group at a Class 5. We are now the top of the group, which is kind of cool. There have been no other Class 4 communities in Region 7, so we're the first. And then as you can see, for the state of Iowa, we shared a class 5 rating with a few of our neighbors. But now we are the top of the group for that, for the state of Iowa as well. So I don't know if there will be a FEMA or money in FEMA to get the nice class 4 plaque.
We can make that for you. You know,
They had given us the 6 and given us the 5 in the past. But I don't know if they're gonna
We'll
be.
just take the discount for all of the
It's a
insurance.
good Crestview
premiums.
project.
Crestview project. Yes, the ranking is great. It's been fun to kind of continue to work on it. The real benefit, again, is one, just simply the fact that it coordinates all of the efforts. It keeps our minds thinking about how to be better. But secondarily, it is a real benefit to the residents, particularly those folks that have to have flood insurance. So it's been pretty interesting as I talked to a lot of folks that have flood insurance or the requirements for flood insurance. Most of them know and recognize that there was a discount that came into place a few years ago, but they don't know why. So then when I've had the conversation, oh yeah, it's because of the city's efforts to get into the community rating system, and that's what's giving you a 25% discount to your flood insurance. So it's meaningful to the residents. They just don't know that you all have done it for them. So that's one thing that we've been talking about, trying to tell that story a little bit differently, try to help people understand that it is the good work of the city that is helping them meaningfully reduce the costs associated with those flood insurance premiums. The class 4 will give them another 5% bump. So now they're dealing with a 30% discount on their annual flood insurance premiums, which is a nice benefit as well.
Can I offer one point on that? It's been mentioned when Chief was presenting too. One of the outputs of the tabletop exercise this year specifically was, let's use that story to go get some more earned media about how Clive does prepare, how Clive relies on great partnerships with our residents and businesses to help with their own preparations, and we want to help with that. But it's also a chance for us to tell the story about how important it is that we have strong state federal partners so that we can do this well. And the community rating system here and that whole apparatus around the insurance is a great example of that, where this is a critical way for so many people and families and businesses at Clive to manage their risk. And if we can help them do that even better, all the better, right? It's a powerful story to tell. It's also one that we survey on during the resident surveys, when we ask how well do you feel Clive does in being prepared for emergencies. It's not a number, if I remember right off the top of my head, that we've seen a lot of movement on. But I think there's a chance for us to really drive that up, because it is a critical service that the city, the residents expect their city to provide. That's a public safety component. So if we have a chance to improve in that thing where they say they want to see us do this well and consistently, we should do it.
Will you have time to prepare a sheet for DC to get your delegation?
We're going to talk about that here later on in the presentation.
I would think, not to get too into the weeds, but if I were in that area of Lincoln, and I got a postcard, I would think we could target those folks. I was saying, check your policy, make sure you got the form. You know, even if they're getting it automatically, it makes them think, yeah, I'll go check and see if I got that discount, but it would give that credit back to you all of what you've done, right? And
Doug does that mailing.
Yeah.
Every year. That's part of how we make
sure you
points
get
for
your
the great system.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I don't do that. And that's a really interesting way to come at it as well. We did, as part of the community rating program process and in part of our intent to be partners with our property owners, we do have a mailing, and we're talking about 524 Clive property owners that have some measure of flood risk. So again, it's not an insignificant amount of people. Almost a third of that have flood insurance policies. And that is again relating to about $75,000 of total premium savings for those residents across the community on, again, an annual basis. So we do have communication efforts that are important to create awareness of the flood risk, give people the tools and the resources they need to make good decisions. And flood insurance is certainly one of those tools that folks need to be aware of. But I love the idea of kind of killing two birds with one stone, basically, with trying to message it in a way that, hey, go check your flood insurance policies. Because one, again, we only have about a third of our property owners taking advantage of flood insurance, which does make me a little bit anxious, generally speaking, right? So that means 2/3 or a couple hundred people have flood risk and may not have the ability to manage the bad day when it does come. So again, I appreciate the feedback there and it's something we can definitely take a look at. Beyond the community rating system, I want to talk about the Polk County Hazard Mitigation Plan. And again, as you recall from.
You can read that, right?
Got it. Don't even need these things.
The table part of it is kind of the unimportant aspect. I simply wanted to represent that the city of Clive, again, as being a good floodplain manager, if you will, spends a lot of time thinking about all the different ways, whether it's programs or policies or communications or outreach, how to be as good as we possibly can with mitigating or managing these risks before the bad day does show up for the community. We do this on an annual basis of evaluating the programs and policies. Again, over the last 12 months, we continue to make good progress with the buyout program and even some of these other more kind of tangential issues that you might not think about, but with the Greenbelt Landing Project, incorporating some components to reduce some of the flood risk to that facility. The vegetation management throughout the Greenbelt is also a flood mitigation measure as we kind of continue to open up the flood flow capacities of the waterways. That's important. Updating the technology plan to make sure that we're as safe as possible against cyber attacks and things are part of hazard mitigation. The Walnut Creek watershed and all the improvements that we make there. Obviously the CRS, the improvements that we made to our building and code enforcement through the software enhancement is also another way that we've made progress in mitigating these risks. Moving forward, we have some interest in updating the flood response and emergency operations plans, continuing to evolve that. We're actively working on the relocation of the University Pump Station. Indian Hills neighborhood is kind of the next on the to-do list to figure out how to bring more awareness to the risk in that neighborhood and look for opportunities to mitigate. Hopefully we're able to finish our partnership with Metro Waste Authority and help them sort out some issues along North Walnut Creek and the landfill that you all are a member of to see if we can come up with some solutions there. And then as we continue to have opportunities to acquire additional floodplain grounds for the expansion of the Greenbelt, one of those multi-beneficial opportunities where we can acquire property for flood mitigation benefits, but then the community gets the true benefit of having it as part of the Greenbelt. We have a few more of those opportunities to take advantage of. So this plan again was adopted in kind of an updated fashion earlier this year. So we don't really have anything to add or subtract out of the list. But certainly if there's some things or some ideas or some initiative that you folks have been thinking of, certainly we'll take that under advisement and see what we can do to incorporate it. All right. Whoa, it is gonna take off. I got you. So now jumping into University Boulevard space, and this is specifically talking about the flood buyout program. Over the last 12 months, we've picked up 6 more residential properties. Right now, we have 23 residential acquisitions completed. We have 10 homes still being used or in place, if you will. So we still have some demolition work to get accomplished, but I've been very pleased with the folks that had the absolute most highest risk. We've solved that riddle. Those folks have all sold. So those homes that give Matt and the chiefs significant anxiety when it rains, that's a much less of a concern at this point.
Just
So
east of 78,
basically, each side of 78th Street, kind of just north of the boulevard, that was kind of the hot spot. That's the lowest spot of the bird bath. Obviously, there's some other properties that had some severe risk as well, but that particular pocket gave everybody the most heebie-jeebies. We're also, again, making some good progress here over the last year with some of the properties along Drake Street. So we still have some probable communication issues that we need to address, but we're making progress with a lot of those folks. The commercial side's a little slower, and most of that is because most of those acquisitions are being done with the benefit of some type of federal assistance. So with the turmoil that we're dealing with, those are having some impacts on our ability to actually progress. Just again, quickly showing you kind of those skip dashed areas of green. Those are all buildings that we have or are likely to have funding secured for. So again, if we can get across the finish line with our federal partners here, we can make a pretty significant move into this next phase of the buyouts. So all in all, the program, I honestly don't know that I could come up with very many extra ways to make it better, honestly. I think the flexibility that you folks have brought to this program with the ability to bring the funding and then giving staff a lot of latitude to kind of work appropriate deals out with property owners is incredibly appreciative from those folks. And I don't know if any of them have reached out or talked to you, but the property owners really do appreciate the way you're allowing the city to work with them to take this tough situation and come up with something that's reasonable, that's fair. It allows them to move on in a way that's, again, feels good for them. So from the program standpoint, it's going well. We need a little more help from our friends in DC, but we're still optimistic that we're going to be able to see the end of this over the next 5 years or so. Any questions on the buyouts?
Shoe's gonna fall here soon, isn't it? Because you said the good news starts at the beginning.
Yeah. We're
Drop that shoe.
kind of on the downhill slide here.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Crap.
University Boulevard flood mitigation planning efforts. So this is the work that we have had funded through federal grant. We've been awarded. We have a subaward agreement in place. We're under contract with our vendor. We're about halfway through the project. It's been a little slower than I wanted, but as I alluded to earlier, this thing has become really, really complex. What's going on with Walnut Creek, North Walnut Creek, and then really what we're trying to ascertain through this process is, again, we're addressing flood risk principally through the removal of the buildings. So this planning process needs to help us do that first and foremost, but secondarily, it's starting to lay the groundwork for what's going to happen in that space once all the buildings are removed and this flooding can just kind of go wherever it wants to go. What is been really fascinating to kind of figure out is where can we create, or how are we creating benefits from the flood mitigation work we're doing? We're taking out the buildings and then we're using this land hopefully for some measure of flood mitigation. And there are really 3 or 4 beneficiaries. One is our downstream neighbor, Windsor Heights. We can keep more water in our space, maybe that reduces their flood risk for their area. Similarly, the folks along North Walnut Creek, if we can make some changes to the way water moves through this space, we might be able to reduce the flood risk for some of those homes that are impacted. We also know we have Indian Hills neighborhood upstream. And surprisingly, there are things that we're finding that if we make improvements in this space, we're actually demonstrating that there are upstream benefits for Indian Hills. And then finally, although again, the buyouts are taking care of the immediate problem in the middle, flooding is still occurring around the edges of the buyout space. So there are, again, things that we're doing that are reducing the flood risk along the boundaries. So we have these unique beneficiaries, but the benefits are not able to be equalized amongst those 4 entities. So we're really working various iterations to try and figure out how can we create the most total benefits from this flood buyout space as a means of saying, if we can create these many benefits in the concept of hazard mitigation, FEMA will say, if you can create these many benefits, you can, in essence, ask for a similar amount of money. So if we could, again, just back a napkin kind of math, if we can create $50 million worth of flood risk reduction to those beneficiaries, then we could figure out a way to say, we want to buy buildings, we want to create wetlands, we want to dig some ponds, we want to do things to improve the flood risk management in the area that we're also going to be able to take advantage of because it's a green belt and green space and park amenities. And we can do that for $50 million. 50 million in benefit, 50 million in cost. Thumbs up, rock and roll. If we could figure out how to allocate those benefits across each of the project types. So the area south of the boulevard, it might have a stream remeander and an excavation component. Might create a certain types of benefits for each of those 4 areas. Similarly, if we're going across the street in north side and started excavating out there, it creates a set of benefits, North Walnut Creek, so forth and so on. What we're doing is going through and analyzing all of these various options and these models that we're using to analyze these. Each iteration takes about a day of computing power to spit out the answer. So we're going through very methodically looking for what is the optimal arrangement of improvements, creating the most benefits as a preferred alternative. Like I said, I'm going to come back to you at some point in the near future and say, here's the optimal arrangement, but the benefits might be more in Indian Hills if you want to do this, or it might be more in Windsor Heights if you want to do that. So again, it's going to be an interesting conversation, probably in about a month or 2, as we kind of finish up, kind of looking at where these opportunities exist. And that's the happy part before we really get into the gloom, which is all of this might be great. And the idea of a hazard mitigation $50 million project may not be anything that we ever get to see again because of the changes that are occurring in federal.
That's great, Jeff. Thank you.
So, you know.
So that whole bowl area could be Lake Weaver.
It could absolutely be Lake Weaver. There's probably room to
And
make
then-
a little bit of a wetland McCoy if you'd like.
I don't know about the wet.
Bioswale.
But then you could have a casino boat on the lakes.
You don't even have to have a lake anymore.
So Doug, on the Windsor Heights stuff, is there a way, or have we talked to them about having them contribute in order to help make our funds go further?
Yeah, really, we've been in conversation with Windsor Heights from the get-go, even before we kind of got into the specific plan itself. We have always talked about, again, to a degree, it's our own self-betterment. The broader we think, the more benefits we can accrue and then we can leverage. So as we speak to Windsor Heights about this, obviously they have flood risks that they have worked through a couple different iterations, and they kind of know that they're similarly situated to Clive in terms of the buyout space. It doesn't matter what you do, that area is just going to get hammered. You folks came to the realization that the only way to solve it is really to buy it out, which again is the right answer. Windsor Heights doesn't necessarily have that same ability, capacity. So they are hopeful that maybe our project or others within the watershed might be able to provide some measure of benefit for them on a regional scale. And we went into this project really thinking that there was that possibility. And I'm not completely discounting it yet, but our space, our buyout area is probably not big enough to move the needle very dramatically for them. We might be able to provide some benefits, but it doesn't solve their problem, and I don't know that we'll be able to solve
They're
it.
not incentivized to really contribute much to our.
They're willing.
They're willing.
They're willing.
And it's a situation where, you know, an inch of water in someone's house, that's significant, right? So even if our project only results in an inch of water not affecting Colby Woods, there are benefits accrued. We might not need Windsor Heights to say, we'll give you $1 million, but if we can simply get their support, their endorsement, their come along with us as we try to advance this project because they're getting a benefit, you know, there's real value in that as well. And that's why we're continuing to build these partnerships, build these relationships. You know, the previous slide talked about, we had over 50 technical stakeholders that we were able to convene around this conversation. And each one of them may not have the full thing or a perfect solution for us, but if each person can kind of contribute a little bit, you know, that's really what it's going to take for all of us to see the type of outcome that we want.
You know, Doug, what was it, 8-10 years ago when we embarked on this? I'm trying to think now. But you know, we all chose to take an activist strategy, not to just sit back and say, well, we're going to get flooded, and just focus on the cleanup or revision effort. So you know, I applaud you and staff's efforts on this, spearheading this. I think the whole region sees Clive staff as experts on this type of flood mitigation strategies, tactically putting together all the pieces with the buyouts, the coordination, involving stakeholders, and applying for the different grants available too. I like the thinking of, if we can save $50 million, do we get $50 million worth of grants? Does FEMA or the Fed have that same thinking as Doug Olin died?
So that leads into the gloom part very nicely.
Way to set them up.
Well, you know, it's a legitimate question.
And we're at a decade. So the 2015 flood is what
Gotta
triggered
take
all
this
of
up.
this. We're at
So
10
it's been
years.
10 years.
Before Eric's gloom, can we, has the tank farm operated? I mean, they've got a lot at stake here
A lot of
too.
assets.
Why wouldn't they be involved other than they never want to be involved in anything? But
I mean, there's a couple. I mean, their flood risk is not really that significant.
Till we firm up the, west of the winter.
Doesn't matter. These are big steel tanks. They can deal, let it all flood.
Okay.
Let it all flood. They only have really, I mean, there's several critical components, but there's really only one really critical component. And that's what they call the pig valve, where the pipeline comes into the facility and comes above ground and then goes back in. That above ground valve is in the floodplain area. So if a tree that's in the floodwaters came and wrecked it, you know, that would be a problem. But otherwise, yes, they don't want to be flooded, but it's not, oh my gosh. This is
They're
gonna
more
be
like a
expensive.
railroad. They're not gonna cooperate because they don't have to. I mean, they have nothing to gain or lose, but being just a good neighbor isn't in the.
They don't have the level of risk.
If there was an ask,
And there's no altruistic motion for them to do it, you know?
but I do think that if there was an ask, if there was a need, if there was something that we could do off of their property to improve it, I think there is that opportunity. We have that kind of relationship with them. And even though the
Sean
railroad
asked for
So can they move it?
We don't.
move it, no.
That's a whole different story.
I'd ask.
The railroad, you know, surprisingly, we've had some decent conversations with them recently. It's been a little awkward, but we're having those conversations as well. So, yeah, it's gonna require everybody, again, to kind of have a piece of this puzzle. The FEMA aspect, again, is really the thing that's been taking a lot of time here in the last couple of months. So, up until about a month or month and a half ago, the answer to that question you asked, Eric, is yes. I mean, the administration, the FEMA's approach was really, in the past, very much a reactive, flooding, bad things happen. Let's give the communities the resources to help get them back on their feet. More contemporary thinking is, how do we reduce the number of people that we have to help when the bad day happens? And everybody knows that there's a substantial return on investment to that pre-disaster mitigation spending, to the tune of, the last estimate was $13 to $1 invested. So a significant change of thought process around pre-disaster mitigation, which is everything we're talking about in the flood buyout. The BRIC program, Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities, was the largest pre-disaster mitigation program that the federal government has ever put out. That program was funding, supporting a lot of the efforts that we were working towards. And unfortunately, here just a few weeks ago, that program has been canceled. And it's not just canceled going forward, of which we were building applications for. It was also going after any unspent money over the last 3 fiscal years within that program, of which we have been the recipient of as well. So we had a couple pieces here where we had an award, partnership award with Metro Waste. That was part of the BRIC program. Canceled, gone, poof, poof, bye-bye.
I got it the first time. You didn't have to do all the extra.
We are also, again, looking for the BRIC program to help facilitate our pump station reconstruction. That, you know, the last 6 months of work, putting that together, poof. Indian Hills, again, was going to be the next flood mitigation planning neighborhood that we were quite confident that we'd be able to receive funding for. That went out the window as well. So it had a real impact on our ability to kind of move forward. However, again, I think a lot of, in a large sense, because of our relationship building that we have with the state is partnering with us to pivot those applications into a different funding path. So both the Metro Park East, the water pump station, and the Indian Hills mitigation projects have a strong likelihood of still being funded, just out of a different program through the state itself and through the disaster declarations that have occurred in the state over the last year and a half. So we are still quite hopeful that we're going to be able to move those pieces along. What it means in the distant future for, hey, well, we got this $50 million project and we need a $50 million brick program to help us get it done. That is an absolute unknown at this point. We do know that one of those pre-disaster mitigation programs, kind of the old program, the Flood Mitigation Assistance Program, which is principally funded through the National Flood Insurance Program, is probably not going to go away. It just means that there's a whole lot more competition for a smaller pot of money. But as I continue to stress to people, good projects find money. And we have a good project. So it is going to be just a matter of continuing to slug our way through it, adjusting, pivoting, scratching, clawing, whatever it takes. Good projects find money. And I do think that we have that ability. It might take longer, might not come in an absolute linear process, but I do think we have a good path to find success over the long term, which has really been our goal from the get-go.
Doug, you're right. Good projects do find money. And it doesn't mean that because the brick program was canceled, there won't be a replacement program put with this administration forward, because there always is going to be the need there. And that doesn't mean there won't be some other type of federal funding program that works on this as well. So as long as you folks keep doing the good work you're doing, you know, the groundwork, who knows?
And whether or not it's state or federal, or we find a different pivot or a different way to leverage. Again, part of this process is to figure out a way to diversify. We kind of knew that FEMA couldn't be our only option. So we know we were needing to tap into things like environmental services. You know, what is the uplift to wetlands? Or to habitat or water quality. That's why we are also very interested in exploring, were there opportunities to create some redevelopment spaces, right? I mean, that's a different way to fund this potentially. So those things are all still in the mix. They will probably take, in essence, a headline in the short term at least, until maybe there's some new thoughts or different administration or whatever it is that comes out of the federal partners. But there's still a lot of folks that are interested in working with us. So again, I'm quite hopeful that we're able to keep this thing going. That leads into the specific problem, which is that gray highlighted piece. So this is the University Flood Mitigation Project Scoping Plan grant that we received in 2022. It is 420,000 roughly, no, sorry, 300,000 roughly of grant money that we are using to do the study work that I was just previously talking about.
That's the $250,000 study.
It's 420,000, 300,000 funded through grant. We are about halfway through that project. So we've spent on the order of about 220,000 of the 420,000. We have a reimbursement request in for about 100,000 for accrued invoices. It is a brick program that, although we have not gotten definitive information that they are going to claw back this money, this program, our reimbursement request and the future reimbursement up to our maximum grant amount is certainly in jeopardy. So you already spent 220,000 roughly. You need to spend another 200,000 to complete the project. It is possible that that full freight is on the city. So your options, we can suspend the contract and just pause. Hope that we get some clarity and then maybe start up the process again if we know that we're gonna be reimbursed. That's option one. Option two is cancel the contract, take what we have, and just simply wait until another opportunity exists. Maybe I can chase a different grant path and maybe pick it up again next year. Third option is take the risk, get this project done because we know the work is foundational to the next 5 to 10 years. It does present obviously a situation where, $420,000, substantial amount of money is fully at risk. It will not have a dramatic impact to the project itself, in which we currently have about $2.5 million allocated to university buyouts. It will not necessarily impact the ability of the city to make its match requirements if these other things come through. But what I will tell you is it will put us right to the edge of the ability to do any more advanced residential property acquisitions. Because if I have to keep enough money to cover the matches that we already theoretically have allocated to us, that's going to tap us out. So that's the circumstance if we make the decision to just continue to plow forward with the planning process and we don't get the money that we have otherwise been told we're going to get. So we have a policy related question that we do need to have some direction on. At this point, every day that I keep allowing the contractor to work, it's costing us more money. So I've advised them of the circumstance, but I have not told them to pause or to stop at this point.
And I'll add to that, and I included in my memo, and Doug and I have talked about this. Staff's recommendation at this point is option 3. Is to continue on the path. As we talked about earlier, we have bought out some of the most critical residential properties. We definitely still have other residential properties that on the Drake Street area that are on the periphery, but still have flood impacts. That this planning effort and kind of coming up with the creativity and the options are so important to how we move forward that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, at least from staff's perspective, to pause that. And I don't know if we're going to have much clarity anytime soon to know whether or not there would be we would get completion of this particular grant program. So we do have the resources, as Doug alluded to, we're right on the edge of how the local matches may play out and these others, but we do have the resources. We're there. And we do have future funding allocations in our CIP in future years to contribute back to that, pot. But just on cash on hand, we think we can cover it. So that's staff's recommendation to you for your consideration.
What are the ramifications of pausing? So for lost momentum, opportunity costs, time to ramp back up? If we have to pause for a year or a year and a half, what does that mean?
The most specific issue around the pause is even the other funding sources that are still at least in place today, those are an annual cycle. So the work that we're doing here is intended to set the stage for the next cycle, which starts in December. that's been the goal, is to carry the momentum from the planning and into the next implementation ask. The money always comes a year later, basically. So that's the most near-term issue, but that's an opportunity, right? It take advantage of it or you don't. If we don't this year, hopefully it's still there next year and we just queue up for that if we've caught back up with the planning process. The bigger issue is the likely projects, the flood mitigation to-dos that are gonna come out of this are very, very long lead time projects. So every bit you delay, you are truly slowing things down dramatically.
But what about the funding for those projects, based off of everything you're saying? Will we even have, we finish the plan, will we even have the funding to do the implementation?
So if we are coming out of the planning process with the mindset that we're solely reliant on FEMA, I would agree with you 100%. But my goal is to come back with an implementation strategy that minimizes our reliance on FEMA because of the uncertainty. So if we haven't built other relationships and capitalized on those opportunities to achieve our goals, then I've missed dramatically in the process. But big picture wise, again, if we simply said we want to pause, we'll keep doing some of the buyouts as they come up. We'll keep, the other 4 or 5 grants going, hopefully, if they're still there. And we'll just, slow down a bit. That's not the end of the world. But it will have an impact on kind of that momentum that we have created. No doubt about that.
What's everybody else think? Are we good with option 3?
I looked it up to see if there are any lawsuits pending on this, because a lot of funding has been restored when there are lawsuits in play, but there aren't any lawsuits yet.
I saw, I think in my research last night and the night before, there were 2 communities that are somewhat similar to us. It was an older brick grant, but these were for actual construction project improvements themselves. So they are under contract with somebody to build a water treatment plant or something, 10 or $12 million. So, again, FEMA awarded them. They have a contract, so they contracted to build them a thing for $13 million. And FEMA says, yeah, we want $9 million back because you haven't spent it yet. So that lawsuit was being made or filed. There are $1.8 billion of projects that are kind of like us. So this is probably the first of what is likely to be many. Now, again, does it make sense for us to sue the federal government over $300,000? But maybe over 9 million, maybe.
Well, a lot of the funding though has been from the general lawsuit instead of individual
Yes,
entities.
there's
Is
definitely
kind of what I'm thinking is probably possible to happen. And because the appropriated funding that Congress already approved, it's probably not even illegal to be withdrawing the way they are. So
It isn't, it
you
isn't.
can't count on it.
I will tell you, we fully went into the agreement with the state and the state through to FEMA. We know the agreements require us to understand that the funding can be taken away from a moment's notice. And we have to have our contracts So our contract with Confluence is structured that we can terminate tomorrow. Again, it wasn't because somebody thought this was coming. This is just the way all the federal standards have been for as long as I've been working in the space. So, you know, not that it's right, but they are doing what they are able to do.
Maybe, but for example, the Iowa Wildlife Federation just got their RCPP funding turned on again. There's a lot that is happening that is under the same kind of thing where they've been told it could be taken away and because of lawsuits and injunctions and that kind of thing. funding is flowing.
I don't think we can rely on that. It'd be a bonus.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
No, there isn't.
Right.
anything related to
I mean,
it.
my preference is to move forward, option 3.
Okay, we got one to move forward.
Yeah, I'm ready to move forward. So we've gone too far down this trail to be timid now. Especially Matt, you said we were able to cover that, maybe get more conservative with buying new properties, but at least we can finish what we started right here.
Susan,
Yes.
keep going. Michael? Sure, okay.
We're gonna keep going then, so we'll be back in a month or so. We can talk really detailed hydraulics and hydrologic conditions.
Raybur's gonna give me the clip notes.
The other programs or the other grants, as I mentioned, we're continuing to make adjustments. And again, I think what will be really important is Pete kind of talks to you about the partnerships, but it is absolutely imperative that we continue to build a strong relationship and do everything we possibly can to kind of help advance the mission of the state hazard mitigation folks in this space. One, because they are directly helping us make the adjustments necessary. But if FEMA were to go away or be reallocated or whatever it might be, it'll be the state that then has to pick up the load. So when that bad day does come to Clive, it's going to be the state helping us. As much as we can do to kind of help keep them afloat, if you will, strengthen their resources. If there are adjustments, it'll be incredibly important for the city of Clive to do what we can in that area.
There's some early initial steps, at least the state starting to recognize this. Probably read the governor signed a bill last week that started to allocate funding and some more disaster preparedness activities at the state level. $13 million is a drop in the bucket, part of the analogy, but I think it's important for cities, and this is something I intend to talk to the Iowa League of Cities about too, as we think of proactive legislative strategies going forward, is to say to the state of Iowa, the state needs to be in a position to be able to take on more load. And because you're going to have cities and communities, particularly with the number of events that happened last year, and that was kind of the catalyst for the bill that was passed here recently, is the state's going to need to do a whole lot more. And how are they going to partner, with counties and cities? We're already seeing a lot of that at the staff level. But there's going to need to be additional funding considerations that the state's going to have to consider. Because there is, unlike, Clive, who's well prepared and have a lot of strategies and some funding to bring to bear. We saw last year, there was a whole lot of communities that were impacted, particularly in Northwest Iowa, that had no idea what to do and had zero capacity to try to even apply for some of the grant funds that we applied for. And so that's something I think you can see the state starting to wrestle with. And I think we need to leverage that point too, and encourage that to expand going forward.
So Matt's very good point there. Think about all the work that we did after the crisis of get back on your feet, clean up from the last flood in 2018. We were doing all of that without the energy that comes from having to respond immediately to an event, continuing to grind and keep our eye on it. That's just not capacity that exists in a lot of other communities now.
So with that, with the direction, I think we'll transition to the advocacy side with our federal delegation of the SPRINT program and then particularly the FMA program maintaining. That's our big number. Right. particularly for some key client businesses.
So,
Before we do so, is everybody good? Go, how long's your report?
10 minutes.
Is everybody good for another 15, 20? Okay,
Past trips to Washington, one of our primary asks has revolved around the BRIC program. We've been so focused on it that we actually were successful in getting it into the partnerships language to DC multiple years in a row. BRIC program now has gone away. And you asked me before yesterday about what we would be recommending today, if it would involve any new money. I would have said absolutely not. Actually, the focus is this year, our federal partners have made commitments and we would like them to follow through with those commitments. Those commitments have been codified in many respects in the actions of Congress. Budgets have been approved. These dollars have gone with it. We've been actively spending the dollars in some cases and have submitted for reimbursement. Our ask is very much just honor those agreements that were already made, those commitments that have already been made. And there are two big ones that we highlight there in numbers 1 and 2. One, it's the big one, and we've been talking with them actively, with the congressional delegation actively about this now for multiple months. Most recently in our meetings just a couple of weeks ago with Congressman Dunn's staff, but even going back to December before the administration change, talking to all the senators and talking to the Congressman's staff too. This is the $14 million for buying some of those commercial properties. This is not the BRIC program, but these are dollars that have been frozen as part of that broader federal sort of freezing activity. At this point, it is simply just a final sort of communication from FEMA about sort of the requirements of the contract that we'd be entering into. And then we would be able to keep moving forward using those dollars to execute these buyouts. We want to make sure we're framing this in terms that really matter the most to these elected officials and to the administration. In this case, these are dollars that have really left some really good and honest business partners, very great client businesses in limbo, that they're trying to figure out what the next iteration is in their business. They're trying to do right by their employees. They're trying to do right by their business. And this freeze is now standing in the way of that. So the first ask is let's make sure we get that locked down. That's the big number. The second one, Greg, this is the gray box that was on Doug's slide, where we've already done this work with this plan. We've already submitted for reimbursement. We want to continue to get this done. It's a really important step for us to continue to do more work that has an incredible return on investment. That $13 to 1 when you do the pre-disaster work compared to waiting till when the disaster comes. We want to see that kind of economic benefit realized here. But we won't be able to do that if they completely leave us frozen here or then start clawing back or don't reimburse us at all for the work that's already been done. Work with us in good faith. We showed up and we've done the work to create this sort of economic sustainability moving forward, a better economic picture for Clive, for these residents and businesses in the state of Iowa. Come be our partner is what our ask is on that. The last 2 points here have to do more broadly with the National Flood Insurance Program. You've heard how beneficial that is to Clive residents who choose to participate. And then finally, a point there about FEMA. FEMA is going to be reformed. It is going to see some big changes. But in the course of doing that, we are still going to be heading into hurricane season, heading into big wind event season in Iowa, heading into flood season in Iowa. We still, in the midst of that reform, need to have a partner who is able to partner with us, be able to help us respond in those situations. Because the diversification that Doug was talking about for future funding or for just capacity to respond to these events, yeah, we've got to do that. But that's many, many years of work ahead of us to do that. The floods are still going to keep coming. So still stick with us and still make sure we have a robust agency that while it is changing, is still able to help respond in those situations. I prefaced all of that by saying that I didn't think we were going to be asking for any new money when heading out to DC, because we were going to be focused on these dollars that were already promised in many ways, or Representative Clive, that yep, you all came and showed us a good cost benefit analysis on this. This makes sense. This is the right path forward. Last night, we got an email from Congressman Dunn's staff saying that there might be a FY26 community project opportunity. Initially, we thought that it would be best to keep focused here because the applications for those are due on Friday. Okay, so do the math there. They gave us about, in effect, 24 hours at best to get this turned around. The good news, though, is that last year when we sort of worked through this program, we were with the city of Waukee talking about some projects on parts of the Alice's Road corridor and some work we could do there. Our intent at this point now is to partner with Waukee to do a little cut and paste to update the proposal and get that out the door. So we will be going out and asking for that new money. But I would argue it's real important that both are important. I would say as precarious as all of this is, the priority I would recommend would be items number 1 and number 2. Those are the lead headlines. And then the others, around 3 and 4, the money potentially around Alice's Road and a couple other projects that we can talk about during reports. We'll kind of fill out the dance card for what we take out to our federal delegation this year.
Don't come home, Klein, if you don't come home.
Do we still planning on submitting a grant to Nunn's office for that community foundation or community grant?
Yeah, that's the Alice's Road.
We're actually gonna.
What's the dollar amount on that?
$1 million.
Yep.
We're gonna, Waukee was the lead last year. We were the tie to that. We were partnered with them on that. Because we're the contract lead for Alice's Road, we're actually kind of taking the lead. It's still both of us basically. But we're really focusing on a specific area of Alice's Road where we're trying to concentrate, the federal transportation money into one phase. That will kind of clean up some other challenges with acquisitions in that corridor long term. But that is the focus, and Waukee was agreeable to that. We're now with our design consultant Snyder Associates there as we speak reformatting that grant application to get it submitted tomorrow.
I was in Congressman Nunn's office today talking with staff and he seemed very optimistic. Last year we were unable to get some of that funding for those community grants that, we'd be eligible, that they were going to push for us. Who knows? But he mentioned this specifically with that. So
This one was high on his list, so.
Yeah, exactly. I tried to push it above, continue to nudge that along too.
Get him excited about number 1.
14.
I'm excited about that.
What did Nunn's office, have they responded on the congressional inquiry they were going to make, a formal congressional inquiry?
This is
what we pivoted this to be that inquiry.
Right. So this is the letter that we will send them asking, well, they wanted it in writing. At that time, after we met with them, we didn't necessarily know where we wanted to focus their attention because we had all of these other things that we're working with the state. And I want to double down on that. The state has been awesome in all of this. For them to say, hey, Clive, let's work to see if we can get you in another funding stream for those other BRIC programs. That's awesome. Because the need is great in many places, right? Credit to Doug, credit to the entire team on being ready and having relationships and being able to prove the cost benefit analysis of these projects. Now that we have sort of, I think, some clarity on strategy and where we would like the Congressman staff to be focused again, because again, this is not the first time we've talked with them about this very specific $14 million number. Back in December, I've got all of our email correspondence and reply letters from the senators, all the things we asked them specifically about this before the administration changed. So this is not the first time we beat the drum. This is a steady drumbeat. They're going to particularly hear us beat it loudly now on this, and we hope they'll come alongside and beat it just as loud with us.
And we thought we would focus on these two.
Is important, right? Because the formal inquiry, has to be answered. Like FEMA has to give you a response. It has to get congressional, get a response. So as long as we're they're willing to write it that way, that it's coming from the congressman inquiry, correct? They have.
They do.
Now, whether they do or not, this era right now, what's going on?
And
Who knows?
And the response can be completely obtuse.
Like the office is empty, nobody home.
I mean obtuse, like answering the questions they want to answer, not the answer the questions we've asked.
Right. They'll beat around the bush. Hopefully, if we can get a strong advocate with Congressman Nunn or our senators, to continue to push that and get a more specific and defined answer is what we're looking for.
We drafted this letter to focus on those two areas because we found some other paths, those other ones, so we didn't want to add those into the mix if we think we have another path to state. But we know that these are the two that still, we don't have another path for at the moment. And so we wanted to kind of laser focus it in on these two, particularly number one.
That's the big one.
Other questions for Pete?
Pete, I'm sure you and Susan and I will get together and have another more discussions moving into that trip.
Absolutely.
Any census information?
Yeah, I can pivot to that real quick. So there are a couple other related items that we'll want to, I think, highlight in DC. One, you've said $400,000, give or take a few pennies.
391,000.
Yes, thank you, sir. We've sent that to the Census Bureau. And we have no status of where our special census is. And so at this point, we would still like to do it. But if it can't be done within a certain time frame, then the benefit to the city of Clive is lost. And we would wait till the 2030 census. If we're not gonna do it, get on it, send the money back, because we've got other things we could spend those dollars. It's a responsible way to use, it's a disrespectful way to use tax dollars.
100%.
We wouldn't disrespect Clive residents and businesses like that. We can use space things with rock. So the more I talk about it, the fiery I want to get about it, just because this seems like it's so far away from just basic good governance.
Wires right here.
The other item that would want to talk about while we're out there, I've lost my train. That was the special. Yes, thank you.
EPA funding for Greenbelt land.
FY 22 EPA grant. There was a congressionally directed grant, an appropriation for Greenbelt landing is now stuck and has been for many, many months, over a year, stuck in various loops. Making progress, but with this freeze, the status of it has been sort of hard for us to always pin down. We do have some indication that they are working the process of getting an NEPA approved, which would then unlock our ability to go and start working in the area, and then as we do the work, get reimbursed through the grant. However, that same reimbursement process that Doug was talking about being dicey is similarly dicey, even if we get the green light to finally start the work on the stormwater plan. So we're working contingencies to make sure that if that is the worst, if that bad thing happens, we can still pay for it with the direction of the council, obviously. But it obviously would be much better for those dollars that were already approved by Congress to get to the city of Clive and get put into this project to the benefit of everybody in the community. So those will be the other two that I would recommend that we put on the list. Again, mostly it's about dollars that have already been represented as law, as yes, part of the budget. That's part of what we said we were going to do.
While you have the floor, anything in under reports you'd like to tell us?
I want a positive thing, right? A positive thing that we've been working really great with the school district and continue to get ready for that next mailing that'll go out to the 86th Street neighborhoods about collaborations. We're getting a chance to share pictures of what that new playscape is going to look like, which we're very happy about. And next week on Monday or on the 12th or 13th, actually I'm a little ahead of myself, I'm a week ahead of myself. In early May, we'll be going over to celebrate the classroom at Crestview that had best attendance for the year. They win the GOAT Award, the GOAT Attendance Award. And as part of that, they get to cuddle with the Clive Greenbelt goats. The stories coming out of Crestview are really fantastic. They deserve a ton of credit for the way that they have served so many students and families this year.
We have the new kids that they've been born this year yet.
This year, we have new kids. So we have some baby goats, and we purchased these kids. We did not have a stud come in and pregnant any of our females.
Steve has been retired.
Steve's retired.
For a couple of years now.
Too soon.
Too soon. That's it, Your Honor.
All right, we'll move down to your end, Ted.
All right, real quick, MPO, the SDBG grant allocations were identified. We had one project, Alice's Road Phase 4, so very much a future project. Our request was 2.5 million. We were not awarded it. Our score came in at 69 in the kind of arcane scoring system that they use. I think the cutoff was around 85, so we're not that far off. And we still have time for this particular phase. And I think technical committee, Jeff, will get the more specifics to help us with the next round.
I know you went to Indiana and all, but 69 is failing and 85 is a B. You're saying it's 69 is
We weren't
okay.
that
In
far off.
Indiana, graduation is okay.
That's all right.
We'll take it.
I'll follow up with you on some amendments to our other NPO, previous received NPO allocations to Alice's Road, and what some strategies we're gonna talk with the NPO staff about.
Okay, sounds good. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ted. Eric?
CDD board met. I'll be serving on the budget committee. We do have a video we'd like to share with everybody.
Richard, could you go ahead and play that video, please?
It's fun.
You should be able to share your screen.
Good weaver.
Okay, take one. We're very weird. And I say that very, like, endearingly. We're not like your stereotypical bakery, although we do have like cakes, cupcakes, cookies, and all that like you would find in any other bakery. I think it's more or less the energy we give off. As you can see, like we have a lot of very quirky things that are a big part of my life growing up. I was born and raised here in Des Moines. Des Moines is like home. Like I'm very deeply rooted to the city. When I was a kid, we never really did dessert in my family. We didn't necessarily celebrate holidays, you know, like everybody else would, or we didn't necessarily have those like moments at like grandma's house with like the cookies or the breads or the cupcakes. So there's been times where I'm just like, am I gonna be able to connect? Are people gonna be able to relate to me and like how I grew up and all that? But I've learned after doing this for 2 years that like everyone has their own story and there is no like cookie cutter way to go about it. The mural behind me that was just recently done definitely has a lot of quote unquote those like cultural Easter eggs. You have a dragon coming over here. This is like your Thai style dragon because my dad's Thai and he's also born the year of the dragon. And then we have like this hand over here off to the side. It has a little bracelet on it and that's a Laotian like blessing bracelet. The pattern on the snake is like your kind of stereotypical Asian soup bowl pattern. And I did that because a lot of like immigrant families, especially my family, they show love through food. The food is a great way to kind of like immerse yourself in culture without having to travel miles and miles. So I would say the Thai food, the Laotian food, the Vietnamese food here in the city is awesome. People like, if you like pho, not all pho is created equal. So it's like, try the one at Sea Fresh, try the one at Pho All Seasons. There's like 11,000 different places. So it's just like, not every burger is gonna be the same. Not every Asian restaurant is gonna be the same. And so then we have like temples and we have churches and we have like events and stuff throughout the city that kind of help spread that knowledge and spread that love. A lot of people won't realize this, but like the Asian communities and the Asian culture in Des Moines is very colorful. I would say the Celebration Festival that happens every year in May is a very good example of that. And it's just like, it's not just like, it's Asian culture. It's like Chinese, Vietnamese, Thai, Lao, Taiwanese. Like there's so many different avenues within that Asian community and they're all vastly different. And even myself as an Asian American, it's just like, there are things that I'm consistently learning. You just have to like, not necessarily look for it, but just, I guess, be open to it. Because once you kind of like open up your perspective a little bit, you'll start noticing a lot more.
This is part of a series of different social touch points. This one focusing on the Asian community here in Des Moines. There's one that focuses on the African American community and there's another with Joe Gonzalez focusing on the Latino community as part of an outreach effort. Again, all it's designed to bring visitors towards the metro area right here, really showcase some of the unique things here. So just want to give you a little flavor on that.
Anything else, Eric?
No, it's a
There, I forgot.
Yeah, Chad.
Metro Waste, has added a drop off in the vestibule here for batteries and the like, so, hopefully that works okay with the chiefs, but we have that now here, in the vestibule. It's from Metro Waste. I think it's good.
Nice. See it underway.
Yep.
We have some updated signage too at the cardboard drop off. The Metro Waste recycling sign.
Those have some recycling drop off.
I'll share some photos of that. Probably update.
Central Iowa Waterworks met this week and we had a film crew there. They were going to be featured at the annual conference of the American Waterworks Association. It's not a big deal, but Central Iowa Waterworks was created. So very unique. We continue to make a lot of progress. Want to talk briefly about the 7 applications that we have for city council. And just going to run through possible process for handling that. Right now, we have it planned for the last item on the May 1st agenda. That's the big question. And once we start the agenda, the candidates would be taken to the green room. Not sure exactly where the consult room is, but it's off the lot. And then they'd be brought in one candidate at a time in the order in which they apply. And then once the interview is complete, candidate can stay in the audience, and we bring in the next one, everyone's interviewed. Then we deliberate in an open meeting on the candidates. Someone would make a motion for a candidate to be appointed. And then or we continue deliberations, wait till the next meeting, make appointment on May 22. And we'll still be within that 60-day window. So if meeting, we make a motion to appoint and it receives a majority vote, move on, or someone could ask to continue to the next meeting.
Is that a tabling? What's the motion on?
It's a resolution, so you don't have, it's not like an ordinance that you have to table. That you can just choose not to move. You're not ready to make your appointment that night. You just don't act on it.
Yeah.
And then we just carry it forward to the next meeting. Okay.
So prior to the next meeting, if this sounds like it works, we'll share that info with the candidates, including those questions. Again, if you have any feedback, hopefully you provide those. And the new council member packet that new council members get. So that'd be the game
Sort of a
plan.
process,
Yeah,
maybe we've done in
yeah.
the past, isn't it?
Yeah, very similar.
Mine is the straw poll.
Yeah, no secret ballot, no straw poll.
Perhaps the green room can be the holding cells.
We don't have.
We don't have a jail.
If the council's good with that process, my intent would be tomorrow, I would send an email to all the candidates with those materials and laying out, kind of giving them a preview of the process, and then attach the council member guidelines or orientations so that they can start reviewing that anticipation for the May 1st meeting.
How quickly can we get their applications and resumes?
You ready to have
In
them?
your box?
They're in your email inbox.
Yeah, 5:57. Oh, okay. All right.
Thank you, Matthew.
All done?
All right. Anything else on this one?
Is there any thought that we need a chance to have a conversation about it? I know we have it the last couple times, but I'm very interested in it being transparent.
Conversation about what?
About candidates, about.
You mean wait till
selection.
May 22nd?
Well,
Is that-
I don't know. Just.
Yeah, I mean, I
Can't
can,
just,
my anticipation for me, not knowing any of the candidates at all, but in the past, we've usually known at least one of the candidates, if not multiple ones. I don't know that I know any of them at this point, so.
I haven't
mean,
seen the list, so I have no
Yeah,
idea.
I mean, the ones I've seen, I didn't know who they were. So I may need more time than just that night, the deliberating one. But
I could, that's what I was
Yeah.
thinking, I guess.
I'm with you on that.
So,
Well,
April
yeah.
11th was Councilmember Mulvaney's official resignation date. You have 60 days from April 11th.
So would it be helpful to just run through the names here?
We can, when we can, we all got the emails, so.
So Andrew Bavard, Bree Hocker, Dave Rosback, Fabian Perez, Gazelle Crow, Jeff Barber, and Tyler Kimmer. Yeah, so but if there's a sense that it might make sense for us not to make a final decision 22nd, maybe it'd be helpful to make that decision now.
Well, I was going to advise the candidates either way. The council doesn't have to make the decision that night. But under the 60 days, you would have to by May 22nd.
I would suggest we give ourselves that flexibility, but if we do find a consensus candidate that we support, why put it off? On the other hand, I'd like to have the flexibility to go
You have
to,
an option.
there wants to be more dialogue in that. But I think we need to keep our options open.
And we don't anticipate from the staff side any action items, as long as you're all going to be here for a quorum for May 1st to May 22nd. That's why we moved the council meeting up to May 1st, because we'll have 2 council members in DC. We wouldn't even have a quorum unless you were on it virtually. We don't anticipate that any action items holding any of that up. It'd run with 4 council members. But you have options.
All right, anything else
Yeah.
on this?
Yeah, just a question on the scenario, let's say it's 22nd. If there were to be a special election, when would that happen? What month or what day?
14 days following your appointment. Once you make the appointment, a petitioner has 14 days from that date
File.
to file for a special election.
And then we have 90 days from then, is that right, Matt?
The election needs to happen within
So
90
in
days.
theory, we're talking about August.
Yeah. If you wait till May 22nd, it could be as early as July. The last time, Pete and I were actually just talking about this earlier this week, the last time that happened. That special election petition was submitted in early February, and we had the election at the end of March. The turnaround was a little bit faster, a little under 2 months, but you're probably looking at July. That would be my guess at the earliest.
At the earliest, and I would make the argument that to be fair to any candidates, you would want to give them as much runway as possible to run a campaign. Build up the infrastructure and then run a campaign, so you would want to give them as much of that 3 months as you could. So I would argue to push it out till August, if we have the time.
And that's
Which will
something
be
we can
just
share with
weeks
you.
away from the filing
Correct.
deadline for the November election.
Right. It makes no sense,
Which
but
makes no sense.
nevertheless, that's where we land. I think to be fair to those candidates, we would need to do that.
All right, anything else on this?
I just report that the Walnut Creek Watershed Management Authority met. The McClure has submitted an extension, basically, or execution plan for the previous 5-year plan. This would be for the next 5 years. We hadn't had a chance to review it before that meeting. We heard some highlights. We typically meet on a quarterly basis, but we're looking to have a special meeting about a month out to have a conversation about the plan, and then would be bringing recommendations from that plan to each of the participating. But that's underway.
Michael, you gonna have anything legal?
No report, Your Honor?
I think, yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
Go for it.
Just a few items tonight. Just a quick update on legislative. More work is happening on the property tax bills. We're hearing of amendments being worked on for the second bill. There hasn't been much legislative activity this week. It's been relatively quiet. So there's not much to report there other than an updated model has been produced. from the Iowa League of Cities and our friends at PFM to model the new bill. Pending some future amendments, we're looking at that at the staff level too, in terms of running different assumptions and scenarios. I think the TIF question is still a big question that's hanging out there. And then actually the league now is pulling in a lot of stories from individual communities of what this may do to development deals, economic development deals that are funded by TIF to tell that story to legislators. So that's ongoing. Still a few weeks left in the session. Of course, the per diem runs out next week, but it sounds like we're going to be going into probably middle of May. At least what we're hearing on that legislatively. Lenan Park, we did receive bids earlier this week on Lenan Park. We did not receive any bidders for one of the 6 construction contracts. It was actually the grading utilities. We had 2 bidders that said they were gonna submit, and then last minute didn't get them in. They're still interested. So what you're gonna see next week is some actions to receive bids, approve plans and specs, and then repost a public hearing for that particular bid item. It's contract number 1, grading and utilities. It's the first work that needs to be done. You can't do the other work without that one first. And so we're going to still hang on to the other. We have good bids for the other 5, and actually we're below estimates on all 5 of them. We need to combine all 5 of them together. We're about a couple $100,000 below overall. Those bids are good for 60 days, so we don't need to make a decision next week on that. And we're going to push this all back to the May 22nd meeting, where we'll hopefully we'll have new bids on contract number 1, and then bring them all back together. What we will have before you next week is the playground, final playground selection for approval, and bring back that Lenan Park naming conversation that the council brought up a couple months ago when we talked about the Lenan the last time. So still got some good bids. We got one that we got to work on here, but still very optimistic that we're going to have a lot of work happening in Lenan here this summer. One other thing, I know that a few council members have seen some of the work that's been happening over at City Hall for the phase 1 effort. I'm happy to provide a tour, whether it's coordinated or you just want to pop in and walk you around in terms of the construction. A lot of things are happening. Drywall, paint's going up. We're seeing a lot of changes here pretty quickly. I know a few of you have been able to peek in and look at that. Happy to extend that to anybody who wants to have a quick tour of the space. I know the library board actually went through it earlier this week for their meeting on Monday and walked through the space with our folks. So
If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to go see it. I mean, it's unrecognizable.
yeah, we made pretty
pretty
big
amazing.
change. You'll actually have windows in your council chambers now for the first time ever. The last thing that I had is next week's meeting too. You will also have Emerald Isle, our favorite car wash. They've now secured all of the easements for the road. And so what will be coming before, we'll just have it on consent agenda next week. It's merely just the share of the funding agreement that was already agreed to. So that is moving forward. Funds are secured, both from the city side and the developer to move the street project finally forward. And that will be happening in earnest here this summer. So after a very relatively painful process to get this road done, it is going to be getting done this summer, and they've secured all of their temporary easements that they need.
So maybe just pull it up, is that just for the discussion?
We don't even need us to condemn.
If you want it on the regular agenda for fun, let me know. I was going to leave it on consent because it's merely an administrative action item, but it's all been agreed to, and we'll be bringing that, finalizing that with you all next week. That's all I have, Your Honor, unless there's any questions.
Any questions for Matt? Matthew, any correspondence?
I'm just going to remind you that we sent out an email with the applications in it, but you already did that. That's all I have.
Very good. Anything else for the good of the order this evening? Otherwise, we will stand adjourned at 8:58 p.m.